Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity, or my personal favorite horror film of all time,
No
Wreck, are
missions, and
all
then
within this
maybe a
subgenre
skit
of
after.
horror. And I've always found it to be the most interesting, not only from a stylistic standpoint, but also just how it makes me feel. It's also the style of horror that I always think has the
Yes,
most
you are in
potential to
option.
be
That's
the
skits too.
most scary, the most visceral, but most importantly to me, the most personal and more aesthetic, if you will. Now, found footage horror films often
Have
present themselves as
boats as a
footage that has been
monkey
found in the fucking name by someone and they're showcasing it to the world. Some of the
with
best examples
boots.
of this are Cloverfield, which always had a really cool ARG alongside of it. But Blair Witch was genuinely presented as real footage. And I just remember when that film first came out, a lot of people thought it was
I don't remember.
actually real. And even the actors would get like
I
asked in
drew
real
so
life
much
if
shit
they're
for
missing,
you,
which is
dude.
quite funny.
I
But
don't
found
remember.
footage to
I'm not
me
gonna
can
keep
always be
tabs.
used in a very personal way. It can make it feel way more isolating as well. It makes it feel a lot more focused on the person. Now, with a game, of
Yo,
course, it's
this
a bit
lime.
different. You can't present the footage as it was
You
found
say you're
because
gonna be
the
lazy,
player
you
is
fucking
directly
liar.
interacting with it. So, how do you merge found footage horror with a game? You want to present a version
It's
of the
such a
footage you've
toxic
been
trait
found,
of
but
you.
also the interactivity of a game. Well, one game
Ah,
series which
yes,
takes
this
this
gives
idea
me
and
motivation and
absolutely runs with
energy.
it, that of course
Ugh,
is
getting up.
Outlast. Outlast to me is a really interesting horror game to talk about because it's kind of that weird horror game to actually like talk about to people. If I ask someone what they like about a game, they often will either go with one of two options in most scenarios: story or gameplay. That's normally what most people will say. Oh, I really just enjoy the
That
gameplay.
would
Oh,
be
I
the
really
case.
enjoyed the story of this game. But with Outlast, it's a little bit different, I think. Most people, I've ever asked what they like about this game, it always comes down to one option. It's the scariest game I've ever played. I remember very
Wrong one.
clearly back when the game came out in 2013, which is insane to think about. Same year as GTA 5. This game's
Yeah, I
13
remember
years
this
old
one.
now. And seeing every creator and their mother playing this game, screaming and acting like it is the scariest game
That's
they've
probably
ever played.
possessed.
Bro, going back and watching these old Let's Players, god damn, they are so fucking loud.
2025
I
probably.
mean, fuck me, even now, some streamers are still playing
Oh,
through this game and
2024? Oh,
screaming their
that was
heads off at
2025.
every single jump scare that the game throws at you. But it wasn't just these creators that were hyping up the game. I remember very clearly my best friend at the time, the one that the whole Dying Light video is about, he said that this was the scariest game he's ever played and the best horror game ever made at that. Now, I also did play Outlast when I was 10 years old. Yes, I was 10 in 2013, give me a break. And I do remember really enjoying the game and being also really scared of it. But now,
Wasn't it all
coming back
colors
to
and
the game,
rainbows
I have a
with
very
that game?
different impression of the game. Seeing some great things I love that this game does, but also I
Yeah,
see some
Terraria,
very
isn't that
big
what you said?
issues that this game has in terms of how it uses its horror to a negative. Now, starting Outlast, we were
Oh.
immediately given the most scary thing in the world for some people, like myself, reading. We have to read.
Oh.
This opening text is kind of odd because it does give the basic outline of what's going on, who you are, and what you're doing. But I feel like this shouldn't be here. I saw some people say that they don't mind it. It gets you into the game, which, yeah, it does. But the thing is,
Doc has
you can
experienced
immediately
some
figure
Silent
out
Hill
why you're
shit.
there and who you are if you actually read the notes you find in game. I feel like this is just here for people that don't want to read the notes that they find, which
I
to me
already
is
have
kind of
lung
an issue because
cancer.
then you're not engaging
It's
with the
not
note
fun.
system and the journal system in the game. I just don't think this entire opening
Did you
paragraph
link
is needed
something? Oh,
because it
yeah,
kind of
you
takes
did.
away from the mystery that the game has at the very beginning. But yes, just like
Yeah,
in my
surprised
opinion, the
Discord
greatest horror
didn't
game ever
go
made,
off for
Amnesia,
that.
this game requires
Yes,
quite a lot
I
of
saw
reading
that
the
one, Kill.
notes and small journal entries that you'll find throughout your journey.
What'd you
It's a
say,
key
Kill?
thing
What'd
to
you say, Doc?
understanding what is going on in the game. But the text also is a warning about the game, kind of just giving a general violence warning, scary warning, nudity warning. There is cock and balls in this game, quite a lot of them at that. But it also tells us who we shall be playing as, that being Miles Upshur, investigative reporter whose current investigation is quite ambitious and is going to lead him into hell on earth. How nice. But we will be diving into the Mount Massive Asylum, the main location that we'll be exploring in the
Pause
game. And
another
at the end,
Windows
it tells
update
us
for
that we
another
are
5
not a
more
fighter
weeks.
and that we need to explore and expose the truth about what has been going on at this asylum. But if we are to encounter danger, we have a couple of options: run, hide, or die. So bit ominous, of course, but the game is very clearly outlining to you this is not going to be a Resident Evil, a
That
Dead
every
Space,
time
a
there's a new
Silent Hill.
update
You
ready, and
cannot
then like few
fight
days
that.
later,
This
I
is
just see a tweet.
truly an
This new
Amnesia style
update
horror
broke
game,
something.
a cat and
I
mouse
was like,
style horror game,
why
as
are
I
you guys
call
still
them. And
updating?
immediately I'm going to state it. I actually prefer these horror games overall. I do complain a lot about these horror games, like Alien Isolation, but that's because I've seen how good these horror games can be with games like Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and I always find it a shame when games just throw combat in and force you to fight things just for the sake of it. This is genuinely becoming a lost form of horror, in my opinion, that's only really seen in the indie scene, and only Red Barrels and the developers of Amnesia are still doing. But as we start the game, we join Miles here as he's having a little drive down a dirt road. Eventually, he
Until you
comes
need
to
to
the
update at
location
some
that, of
point, but
course, we shall
for
be
now,
exploring.
enjoy the
Mad Max's
peace.
Asylum. And man, it is a very moody place, ain't it? And this is one of Outlast's greatest feats. Its visuals, kind of, slash atmosphere, kind of. I'm going to be honest, visually speaking, Outlast has
Is that even an
aged
option?
quite a lot, mainly in the texture work. A lot of the textures look really, really dated, and they just kind of look a bit muddy in a way. It definitely has aged a bit now, but the atmosphere itself is able to just give off such a heavy and weighty feeling and a very claustrophobic feeling as well. But within the car here, we can find our first document. Documents are collectible files that you can find scattered around. They're one kind of note that you can find, and these documents are from the perspective of other people. This document is an email addressed to us from a throwaway email sent on the 17th of September 2013. And the email itself talks about the illegal activity that at Murkoff Psychiatric Systems. The sender, a software consultant who had only done 2 weeks of work there, but apparently has been exposed to some terrible things and is being a whistleblower trying to get the information out there.
That looks like someone just literally added a filter, but the fact that that's actually real is kind of scary.
And people are being hurt, and someone somehow is getting a big profit off of it, winning in the end, and it all needs to be exposed so people can be saved.
Better start
from being
buying all them water bottles and extra toilet paper.
Well, dream therapy is a psychotherapeutic method, which psychotherapeutic means relating to the treatment of mental, emotional, or behavioral disorders through psychological talking based methods rather than medicinal, medical, or surgical intervention. So it's a talky style of dealing with mental issues, behavioral issues, emotional issues. And it involves a client recording and analyzing their dreams with a therapist to uncover some conscious stresses, repressed thoughts, and unresolved emotional conflicts, as it's believed dreams often depict and show the true nature and the true thoughts of a person, being able to uncover unconscious thoughts. These are thoughts that people don't consciously think about, but they are subconsciously stressing them out, harming them, or making them say angry. And actually, it's a method with quite a high success rate when done correctly. So, how is this harming people? This is a method that's used to help people deal with issues, unless it's not this kind of dream therapy. Well, I guess we should head into the asylum and figure this out, shouldn't we? And now armed with our trusty camera, an old handheld camera at that, and man, I miss these things. Slapping some batteries into it, this is when the game really gets its vibe, with a strong grain look effect to it.
Yeah,
night
and
vision
it's
being
those
your
types
way
of
to
cameras.
navigate flashlight, not flashlight or a lamp. And with this
Don't you
camera,
guys
you'll be
miss
able
those
to
old
record events which
oh,
will
no,
unlock
not the
notes,
GoPros, man. Like the
written
ones that
down
you
on
hold
the
in your
protagonist
hand, not the
himself,
phones.
which is
Just
the
like, you know,
other
it's like
collectible in
a
the
big
game,
ass
notes.
box in your hand right there.
Being somewhat of a common to find in the game. They were everywhere. You would look in a drawer and you would find them. You'd go in a room that the game had off to the side and there would be a battery in there that you could grab. And my big problem with hard wasn't just the amount of them you get. It was when you died, your battery, the one that you currently had in your camera, completely refilled to reset you. I hated this because this made the game way too easy and to me actually completely ruined the survival aspect of the game. The thing you're meant to manage has a very easy way to manage. If the game encourages you and rewards you for dying, I see it as a bad thing. That's in hard and below. In insane or in nightmare and above, this is completely different. In my opinion, if you're playing Outlast, play on nightmare. it is the best difficulty to play on. First of all, you only are able to carry 2 batteries plus the one in the camera, so 3 batteries at a time. Batteries also are way rarer. Most of the time throughout my Nightmare playthrough, I only had 1 battery extra most of the time in my pockets. I very rarely was able to find 2 and have 2 extra at one time, because the one that I had in my camera would run out by the time I found another one. But not only that, if you die, the battery does not refresh itself. It doesn't refill itself up. I thought it did because I wasn't actually paying attention. The only reason I noticed it was because when I had the battery basically empty and I died by accident, it didn't refill itself. I actually like this a lot more, and it's actually made my impression of the game a hell of a lot better. My only problem was this was in my second playthrough, where I was playing the game not like a horror game, but more like fucking Temple Run, just running around dodging everything. I had like an extended sequence here where I was talking about the issues with the battery system and how they could improve it. Honestly, they don't really matter now because my complaints were not right, like because I played on hard and not Nightmare. I do think my complaint about the different difficulties still does stand. I think there's way too many difficulties, and the differences between them is not explained well enough to understand the differences. But if you want the best experience, play on Nightmare. Do not even touch the 2 below, because they just are a worse experience in my opinion. Anyway, back to the video. But I do like the lack of light that the game has. If sometimes it does kind of not work sometimes, because the game is actually fairly well lit overall. But here we can kind of just bask in the atmosphere and explore a little bit, quickly finding another document which outlines a patient record for a patient called Billy, who was undergoing said dream therapy. And they were using something called the morphogenic engine as alongside it. But something about Billy's case was highly worrying, and an MRI scan revealed that he was laughing during non-REM sleep. Non-REM sleep means non-rapid eye movement, which is the deep, deep sleep of your sleep cycle. It's normally when the body kind of just completely shuts down, other than like essential things, to completely repair and reset during sleep. So laughing is definitely a bit of an odd thing to see, because normally the body very rarely does anything during this part. But carrying on moving through event, we can see that maybe not everything is as hunky-dory as it seemed. And looking through this window, utilizing the zoom feature, we can see a dead body. How fun. Anyway. Yeah, Outlast is one of these kind of horror games, with jump scares being incredibly common. But within this room, we can find a soldier guy on a pike still breathing, and he does have a little chinwag with us, saying that the variants got out and killed them, and that we can't fight them and we just have to escape the asylum. Again, that opening paragraph, just, I don't understand why it's there. But he does tell us to look for the security room. Okay, that's some good advice that we should follow. And Miles again makes a new note, which talks about all the dead bodies and heads scattered about the room. But he reinforces that Murkoff, for a long time, has had the MO of focusing entirely on profit off the exploitation of those supposed charities they do, screwing over the third world to bankroll another $1 billion. And he questions why Murkoff even has a building filled with crazy people in the first place, and a bunch of tactical cop-looking ass people as well. Also, one of them is on a pike, and he does question what happened there. But the tactical cop on a pike, he doesn't really question that. He kind of just brushes it off and moves on, more being annoyed that he didn't tell him earlier to get out of here. I'm sure he would if he wasn't fucking on a pike. It's very nice of Miles, but now we should really try to find our way out. We already see what's going on here, and we can see shit might get too deep, and that maybe we should call someone to try to take control of this situation. And shimmying our way through this little gap, we get grabbed by the big old lad, who is a patient called Chris Walker, or his nicknames being the soldier. Okay, he was a soldier. Strong fat. Okay, I kind of get it. I like that one. He's a big fat strong man. Kind of makes sense. Or big fucking guy. Certainly is a name. The big fucking guy is a name that Miles gives him. Now, Outlast, you might notice, is a bit of a jump scare game, and this is the perfect game for streamers to play. Comparing Outlast to Amnesia is like flipping how the games handle tension. Outlast is able to build up tension really, really well and really, really quick, with its atmosphere and environment doing a lot of that heavy lifting. Having all these bars on the windows, every door being locked, also adds to that claustrophobic feeling that you have. The beginning of the game, like the first 10 minutes, that tension builds very, very quick. And despite the building being huge, you feel very boxed in, and Outlast uses that fact to just make you feel very scared. Now, normally the way that horror uses tension and the jump scare, you normally have a big building moment, which the game was doing, and then you have a spike, the jump scare. This is normally when you will slowly hear noises, you'll get a little bit more tense, you'll feel a bit like, oh shit, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, something will jump out at you to spike it, be it a body, an enemy, or a loud noise. That is like 101 how to do horror, especially like jump scare you horror. You build tension, you slowly build it up and up and up and up, and then you spike it all of a sudden, which kind of throws you off because the pace of how the tension was building is thrown out of whack. Now, compared to Amnesia, which really took its time to really make you sit in the tension and allowed more breathing room between big jumps, it allowed the tension that you were feeling to almost sit there and just marinate for a bit. You would start getting scared of things you shouldn't have been scared of, like a gust of wind coming through a window. You would get jumped by it because nothing had happened yet. Amnesia knew when to hold back and when to wait to throw that big jump at you. Compare this now to Outlast, which within the first, we're talking, I'd say 20 minutes, if that, we've had 3, I would say, big jump scare moments. You've had the door opening, the dead body that comes alive, and now the big boy who grabs you and throws you out the window. These are 3 big scare moments, and they're literally back to back to back. And this is kind of an issue that I'm going to highlight. Using these scientific graphs for how each game uses tension and jump scares, you can see Outlast goes more for this, like, let's keep scaring the shit out of the player constantly and not let them feel anything of them being scared. All right, really quick, I'm just going to explain my really shit graphs. So the blue line is like how scary the game is. So obviously anytime there's a spike, that's a jump scare, or the atmosphere building up. The dotted line I will call tension. It's what you feel and what the developers intend for the player to kind of feel. That's the line that they want you to almost follow. As you can see in Amnesia, the tension line goes up and down constantly. It kind of follows the scare line because they understand when to back off and allow the tension to drop a bit to scare you even greater. With Outlast, as you can see, the way I see it is it just keeps going up because the tension never really lets off. And this makes the game less scary. If the tension's always high, scares don't hit as much. And you see that with the fact that each subsequent scare doesn't reach the same peak as before, if that makes sense. Very simplified, but it's kind of how I understand it. The game doesn't slow down, it keeps the tension high, and the scare will call it high. It keeps
Up the game
throwing more
literally
scares
in
at you.
summer.
This can be a good thing. It can make the game feel very, very scary at first and very, very intense at first, which the game is.
I mean,
It's
you
very
do play
intense in that
but
first 20
occasionally.
minutes. And the first like 2 hours of Outlast, I would say, are really good in terms of how it uses its horror.
Because I was
and
waiting for co-op,
scares
okay?
you constantly. Now, the game is 5 hours long. So this style of utilizing horror and jump scares, unfortunately, runs into an issue. This
Should,
is what we
they
call
shouldn't like put the game on
habituation,
sale. They
which
should
is
like
the
put on
more you're
sale when they
exposed to a
release the
specific
co-op.
kind of stimulus, the less you react to it. I always like to think of horror games and their jump scares as spicy food. If you've never consumed said thing, your reaction will be more extreme to
But
it
I
than
want
someone
it
who's consumed a
now.
lot of it. But within a game itself, this can happen as well. Outlast's constant jump scares will lead you to being scared for the first part of the game, but as you get more and more used to it, the later scares fail to hit as often. And this is something I noticed myself. When I played the game entirely and its DLC, I noticed that the DLC and the latter half of the game didn't hit as hard. They weren't scaring me as much. But when I replayed the DLC a few days later, about a week later, the jump scares actually hit me more because I wasn't used to it. This is a problem with this game. It relies too much on these jump scares that when they stop hitting you and they stop feeling scary, the game loses that core thing that makes it fun, the fear factor. So because the tension's always up here, it's always like really, really high and it constantly is spiking it up and up and up, you never really get to the point where you start to forget about that tension and you start to calm down a bit. So when the game then does throw another one at you, it doesn't hit as hard. If you're always above the line of being scared, you're just going to become desensitized to it and you're not going to be scared of the game anymore. Now, in contrast to something like Amnesia, Amnesia gave you like 20, 30 minutes in between big scares to let you calm down and forget about the last big scare. This allowed each subsequent big jump scare to hit so much harder, in my opinion. And this was something that the Amnesia team know so fucking well, and they know how to do really, really well. There's a reason why Soma and The Bunker are seen as two of the best horror games. It's because the lessons they learned from The Dark Descent, they still apply to this day. Understanding when to scare you, when to back off, and then when to bring it back. But Outlast, the developers, they don't understand this concept of horror, in my opinion. They just keep throwing jump scare, chase sequence, stealth section, jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, chase sequence over and over again, that instead of feeling dread, you start to feel anticipation for the next thing. You start to predict when a jump scare is going to come. You look out a window and go, I'm going to press that button, there's going to be a jump scare. And you're right every single time. You walk into a room and you go, I'm going to be chased now, aren't I? And you are. Or you go into a big open room and you see a key at the end of it. You know that as soon as you grab that key, you're going to have to stealth your way out. And you are always right. Amnesia didn't do this. Amnesia purposefully held back and didn't jump scare you at times when you think you would, because they know that throwing off how used to it you are and throwing off your anticipation doesn't lead to you being ready for the jump scare. It leads to that feeling of dread to creep in again. This is something that Alien Isolation did somewhat well. It understood when to pull back on the alien and allow other aspects of the game to play around with for a bit, and then throw back the alien in to scare you again. It did that really, really well, but then it threw something else in that to me kind of ruined it in a way. So because of how Outlast uses its jump scares, chase sequences, so on and so forth, you have a fear chart, as I'll call it, the fear that you'll be feeling in the game. At the start of the game, it's really, really high, and you can see where those big jump scare spikes are. But slowly, each scare has less and less of a spike effect, and eventually it just starts to sort of plateau out. You're used to it all. Whereas in comparison, the ideal way to do it is make sure that the game can keep spiking and always scaring you throughout the entire game. If that line is the line it needs to get over to make you, say, jump out of your seat or scream or kind of get your heart going, Outlast fails to do that the more you play it, which is kind of a shame. Like, yeah, every horror game gets less scary the more you play it. But I feel like if you play through the game for the first time, you shouldn't feel the game wearing off. You should be scared from beginning to end throughout it. And Outlast, to me, fails to do that because it just wants to scare you too much. Which is fine, but I think they need to find other ways to do it than just throwing a big fucking guy at you and telling you to run away from him. Because at the end of the day, when I'm being chased for him for the 8th time, I'm not scared of him. I just know he is going to one-shot me if he grabs me, and I just run like any other game. Basically like I'm playing Temple Run. What about the big fucking guy, I hear you asking? He is a pretty big guy, standing in at 6'9.5" taller than me. Pretty big guy. But what do I think of his design? I actually really like the designs in Outlast. They're really well done to me. And Walker here, as I will call him most of the time, occasionally I'll call him Chris, he is one of the most iconic designs from Outlast, mainly due to this image and the meme that I think about because of it. He's just kind of funny looking, and I don't know why, but I do really like his design. He's very brutish, very
Close the door.
disgusting looking, and he just works.
No,
really
don't do
like
that.
He's just kind of disgusting looking and very intimidating. Very Mr. X Nemesis style horror villain.
Thank
Again,
you.
pass through a window, we slam onto the floor and get knocked out for a little bit, but eventually we are awoken by a man wanting to talk to us about God. And no, we do not have a front door that we can slam in their face. And according to this fine gentleman, Father Martin, we have been sent to him as an apostle to record the events that are happening within this facility and witness something. And he just leaves us on the ground because apparently we need to go on some journey, something spiritual. This game's going to go into Christianity again and stuff. This was not intentional. My last video was also about Christianity and stuff. So yeah, again, I'm not a Christian. I'm not religious at all. I do believe in God though, just don't know what one. But getting our lazy ass up, we find that most of the doors around us are locked and a few dead guards scattered about on the floor. And of course, a file on the side which talks about a catastrophic security failure that occurred within the facility. And the MHS Murkoff Hairline Security will take over and control the entire facility from now on. So something big really did go down. Some security procedure failed, or something being held within got out. It's actually an interesting thing, and we have seen that something has gone wrong. We've seen dead bodies everywhere, and of course, Big Boy. Is that the thing that broke out? Have they been experimenting, making these soldiers that are just superhuman? Maybe. Maybe that's what this place is. Maybe that's why they have such a vested interest in creating these monsters, so that they can further exert their control over the world. But it does state that MHS, the Murkoff Hairline Security, will take over and control the entire facility from now on. So someone is meant to be in control of the facility, and that's probably the big SWAT vans we saw outside, but we don't see any remnants of them. It seems that they themselves have gone missing as well. But anyway, actually heading to the security room, we can see a goon breaking into another room and a dead guy on the toilet. Not a pretty way to die. But Miles has something to say about that dead body. And fuck me, the mouth of Miles is absolutely beautiful. I'm sure his mother loves his mouth, just like mine does. So let's go over some of the notes that we've gotten so far. So first of all, Miles is hurt, picking glass out of his scalp. He has a couple of cracked ribs, that ain't good. And the big boy, Chris Walker, Miles gives him the description for his face that it looks like someone tried to fuck start his face with a cheese grater. Right. I do know some funny sayings, but I've never heard the saying fuck start. I thought that was an American. And looking it up, I actually don't know what it means. It either means a more aggressive way to kick start a bike, but I feel like that's wrong. But the Urban Dictionary definition is quite interesting. There's no way this is a real word, man. Has anyone actually heard of this word before? I don't understand it. I'm just going to move on. But Miles also describes the old man, Father Martin, the priest guy, as having the face of an alcoholic kiddie fiddler. What the fuck is wrong with this guy? I get it, he's a journalist, but Jesus Christ, tone it down a bit, lad, alright? But we can kind of see the kind of person that Miles is. He's very vulgar, but he does state exactly what he sees. He doesn't hold back. A very good thing for a journalist, because we'll be able to very clearly see his character throughout these notes. And once reaching the security room, we find that it is completely locked, and we need to find a key card to get within it. But in another office, we can find an email about Project Walrider and 4 fatalities that occurred because of said project. But the events surrounding the project have been left ambiguous enough that legal action against them is almost impossible, and that the subjects that they used have little to no family or government interest within them, telling us that the patients here at this asylum most likely are people that either A, aren't that famous, big, important within society, or B, don't have many connections. They don't have a lot of family that consistently look into them. They don't have a close relationship with people. They have found what many people would call the lowlifes in life, people that have been abandoned by the state, their families. They've lost themselves. Most likely what this asylum did was just go around the streets finding homeless people and just taking them. And hey, that does help the government in a certain way. Using homeless people as subjects within this project, whatever it is a good thing, because for the government, the homelessness rate goes down. Them homeless people can't be found, so they can't be accounted for, meaning homelessness goes down, but missing people do go up. But they could just be somewhere else. Maybe they found a house finally and they just aren't accounted for. Maybe that's why the government has turned a blind eye to it. But it does mention here as well that the violence amongst patients has been increasing at an alarming rate. But they believe that they should keep going and producing the results that they need, as the models that they created that predict what they will get will produce a sufficient control of them, the patients, as well as profits will eventually follow. So even though shit is going wrong, they saw that the patients were getting violent, were maybe harming themselves, were harming each other. They knew that eventually they could control them, so they should keep going. It sounds like to me Project Walrider is some form of control, a way to manipulate people, maybe mind control them, which could be sold to the highest bidder as a weapon, being able to weaponize another country's own people, or maybe make completely robotic soldiers or workers who could do exactly you need. This doesn't even have to be something that could be sold to the military. It could be sold to big business owners who could just make their workers always work and maybe just rest when they need to, but they live to work. They are robots because they're controlled. Anyway, moving on from that and going past a rather frail looking man in a wheelchair, we can find some boys watching some telly. Thrilling stuff that. But in another room, we can find a guard with the keycard that we are after, and now we can head back to the security room to try undo the lockdown. And oh look, it's our friend Father Martin on the camera. Ah shit, he's turned the power off. How fun. But now it requires us to go into the basement to restart the power. How fun. And of course, the big boy has finally made his way back to us, requiring us to hide in the locker, teaching us the hiding mechanics of the game. And once he searches the room, doesn't find you, maybe he looks in the other locker, he fucks off. And this is going to be a complaint from me. Outlast has this hiding mechanic to allow you to survive when you're being chased. Now, enemies can get you in these hiding places if they watch you go into it. But this is the funny thing about how Outlast's, I'm going to call them stalker enemies, work. They don't really think. From what I could gather and what I understand from playing the game and also reading a little bit into the AI, the big guy and the other stalker enemies kind of just roam randomly, and they will react to sound. So if you start running, or I think it's just running, I don't even think jumping alerts them, but if you start running, if you slam a door as well, I do think they get alerted to that and they come over to investigate it. But a problem I have with Outlast is how this hiding mechanic works. If you enter a room and you break their line of sight and you get into a hiding spot before they can target you with their line of sight, they will never find you. Never. If they search the room, they will never pick the one that you are in. I don't know if on the harder difficulties they do, but to me, it seemed like they just would search one and fuck off. Okay, quick little bit of research. I have figured something out. Now, in normal, the game is piss easy. I didn't play normal. I played in hard because I thought that's a good difficulty. Hard. I like that. In this difficulty, the enemies will actually jog. They will jog after you. They won't just walk, which does actually make chases feel more intense, but they still aren't fast enough to catch you. So as long as you are always running and moving, they will never catch you in a chase unless you get cornered and grabbed by them. Also, in hard, you die in about 2 hits to all enemies. But the problem I had with it was enemies would search a room, only searching one thing, and fuck off. In Nightmare, the difficulty above this, they do search more thoroughly in rooms, searching more things, but I don't think it's that big of a difference overall. But to me, just from reading people's experiences and understanding of the difficulty, the way that they search rooms isn't that much different. And I think this is kind of a massive issue I have with horror games in general, just overall. I don't like having like optional difficulties. In my eyes, there should only be 2 difficulties in any horror game. The main one, the one that the game is designed around, the I would call canon one. So to me, this should probably be hard, maybe Nightmare, maybe a bit in between them two, because I think that would probably give the best experience to every player. Because I think if you make it too easy, you lose the horror, of course. And then you should have one other difficulty, which is your Nightmare, the top one in Alien Isolation. Which is just like a challenge mode in my eyes. It shouldn't be like, oh, this is the one to play, because it frustrates the shit out of me that I try to play these games in the best way I understand. Like my game design brain thinks, okay, normal is the way the game's meant to be played, because that's normal. And then it turns out that's the easy one. And it's like, why? And then with this game, I play on hard because I'm using my brain like, oh, maybe I should play on hard. And it's still too easy. I probably should have played on Nightmare for me personally, and I probably would have actually found it more interesting. Spoiler alert, I've now played on Nightmare. It did not make that much of a difference. This game just is very easy as a horror game. But knowing that most people, when they play this game, will most likely play on the easiest difficulty because they are either new to the game or are scared shitless, leads to the game having a much worse experience in my eyes. This is like just a small thing that I just have always hated about games when they have so many difficulty options. It mainly starts from me playing old COD campaigns and like Halo, where it's like, well, the easy ones are just boring. The hard, like the main one, like Veteran, I think it is in COD, or yeah, Heroic in Halo is like the main one. Legendary is a challenge, and obviously you had like Lasso, Legendary, all scores on. I like that, but anything below that, it just makes the game feel worse. It makes the gameplay loop feel worse. Not only that, the easier difficulties to me make the game worse, the developers don't communicate what each one entails. The fact that I still can't figure out, just from a Google search, what each of the difficulties, their differences are, to me, even if I was a first-time player, I wouldn't know what to choose. If you want me to explain it really quick, the easiest one, you can carry a shit ton of batteries. You can carry 10 of them. Enemies can hit you up to 5 times, like basic enemies, before you die. I think Chris and Traeger will still one-shot you, maybe two-shot you, giving you a chance to escape. But the game is piss easy. The enemies also walk. They don't run at you. Hard, they run at you. You can only carry 5 batteries, and the main stalker enemies will one-shot you if they grab you. I think occasionally they did throw me, but most of the time they did one-shot me. Chris always one-shotted me. I think Traeger also always did one-shot me, but in the DLC, the Groom sometimes two-shotted me. He'd grab me and throw me, and then occasionally then just grab me and stab me. It was a bit random, but it kind of adds to the fun of it. Now, apparently there is a difference in how they path and how they search rooms. I'm gonna have to verify that. I'm sure on screen I will just put it now. If it does work like that, where they search more in like Nightmare difficulty, which would be nice to actually see. Nightmare increases it again. All enemies, I think, one-shot you, maybe 1 to 2-shot you with the bat, like the normal guys, and you can only carry 2 batteries. And obviously, as each difficulty scales, the battery drain rate, I think, increases as well. And then, of course, in the last one, Insane, it's permadeath. If you die once, the game resets completely, which is the fun challenge mode. I just think there's too much, and I don't even know if I'm right with all them differences. I would need to like verify it, but it just frustrates the shit out of me. If you have these, you need to explain thoroughly what the differences are. If you want my suggestion though, if it's your first ever horror game, play hard. If you've played any horror game ever, if you've played Resident Evil, if you've played Silent Hill, if you've played Alien, play Nightmare. I'd say Nightmare is probably more fun overall. If you do find it challenging, like for some reason, play on hard. Now, of course, Outlast for the time, 2013, the stalker enemies, their AI isn't as complex. Like, compared to the Alien in Alien Isolation or Mr. X and the other stalker enemies of Resident Evil, they're the most simple. The stalker enemies in this game remind me of Jack Baker. They just wander about. They're not bad, but the fact that you can outrun them at all times as well kind of puts a dampener on it to me as well. Because as we get further into the game and you have, there's a lot of stealth / chase sequences, it gets really, really tired really, really quick, especially Chris, because he's used a hell of a lot. And unfortunately, when you can run away from them, what the game becomes with its puzzles is figure out where everything is, then just sprint to each of them while just ankle breaking him, and you will probably beat the game easily. Even on the harder difficulties, you can just die and reset, which makes it very easy in a way. It's a massive nitpick, but it's really sad that I know cat and mouse mechanics can be so much better and way more intimidating if you make the enemy more aggressive and more scary and harder to deal with. But of course, I understand that if you make it too difficult to deal with, it gets frustrating, like really, really quick. Because I remember when I first played Alien Isolation, when I played on the second hardest difficulty, I got frustrated really, really quick because I didn't understand what I was doing. Again, that's because that's an immersive sim and that game doesn't teach you certain mechanics. It makes you figure them out. But anyway, let's now head down into the basement. And yes, the basement is mostly dark. It is mostly pitch fucking black. And down here we can find another file from another file, a CIA document. I wonder what they're doing here. But it mentions hypnotic experimentation and research work with a pneumatic pistol causing someone to fall asleep immediately. Fairly interesting, but it seems that the CIA has interest in whatever is happening here at the asylum. But here in the basement, we have to turn on the generator while avoiding man with club. Guy will club you if he hears you. Now, what I do like about this section is that it's kind of all covered in water, and obviously you're in the dark. So if you splash around in the water, the guy with the club is going to hear you and club you to death. Now, there are also lights scattered about every so often, and mainly in each of the rooms with the pumps. So if you have your night vision on, you might miss that they are there. And I actually really like this because sometimes it gives you a false sense of security where the guy will just see you across the room or through a doorway because you're standing in the light. And it's kind of this goofy ass moment where you both can just clearly see each other and he just starts running at you. It's great moments, and there was a couple times in this game where that did happen, where I would have the night vision on and I would unknowingly be standing in a light and then an enemy would spot me. It's things like that that really do enhance a game a lot, especially a horror game like this, because making you feel uncomfortable in what you're doing gives that horror back. Again, it's a shame the game just scares you every 5 minutes though. This section is fairly good. I do actually like this section specifically. It's very vibey, I like it overall, and just the water and everything, it just adds to that feeling, and I like it. But turning on all the valves and avoiding the man with the big stick, we can run away back upstairs into the security room and try to get out again. But guess what? Seems we are not allowed to leave because Father Martin here desperately wants us to see something, showing us what the security forces that came here are trying to control. Some invisible force that is attacking them. That is some scary movie ass shit right now. But we are now knocked out and are awoken inside the fucking insane asylum, inside of Father Martin's cell. And Miles makes a note of this cell. We have discovered that Dr. Wernicke is the center of all that has gone wrong within the asylum. But apparently, Dr. Wernicke has been dead for more than 10 years. So how could he be the one that has caused all this shit? How have his actions led to what's going on now? But now we have to find our way out, all the while being stalked by two rather nice gentlemen. The twins, who are another stalker-esque enemy. Not really, they don't really stalk you for that long, but you will see them pop up every now and then. They will be following us throughout most of the game, ensuring that we stick to the path that Father Martin wants us to follow. But the asylum area, this like prison area, I really do like it. Again, great area. I like the opening area and I like this area because it's fucking terrifying, because we were in somewhere that felt somewhat safe. Now we're in a place where we are surrounded by these patients, with any of them being able to just turn on us at any moment and attack us, is what it feels like. None of them will attack you. Well, some of them will, but they'll be very obvious which ones will attack you. And I think what I'd love to see in a horror game like this would be almost an aggression mechanic where random NPCs like this could just attack you if you just are around them long enough. If you just fanny about, stand around, keep walking into them, keep staring at them with the camera. Imagine like one of them tells you to stop recording him, but you keep doing it, and eventually he just turns on you and then starts running after you to kill you. I feel like that would be a really fun thing to add, because it would almost make you want to look away and also be scared more of the random patients. But maybe the game doesn't want you to think that, because again, this game's going to dive into who is the real monster at the end of the day type shit. Now, many of them do make references to being hurt or experimented on in some way, fully highlighting that core theme that Outlast is really going to dive into. Human experimentation and how it's used and abused to chase profits, and how it is used to dehumanize society as a whole. But making our way out by slipping through a gap in the wall and getting jump scared by a guy just standing there menacingly, and a guy having sex with a dead body as well. Yeah, this game is going to be fucking weird. He then starts rambling on about something, but he does reveal some important information that we make note of. With Miles now seeing that death is the nicest thing that could happen to him here if he just died and was left alone, because he's sure he probably won't get that luxury. So we continue onwards, following the trails of blood guiding us through to the next part of the facility. Jumping down a drain, finding a guard's office with some cells with a prisoner inside one of them, going on about experiments, but we need to find a way to open this door. So we need to find the security controls, and we can find another person beating up a guard again. Now we just leave him to it, shall we? And using the controls in the next room to unlock the door, we need to then run through a new section, which we then need to again find another key card, but we do see Walker down there just tearing guys' heads off, which is kind of brutal. But grabbing this key card, we can then unlock the shower section and try to find an exit through here, not before the twins try to grab us. But jumping out the window and hanging on, we can slowly let them pass and just shimmy on past them. Now, question, why don't we just jump out? That doesn't look like that bad of a fall. Yeah, it would hurt the fuck out of us, but I'm sure I'd rather hurt my legs and maybe break one rather than be killed by a guy ripping my head off. Who knows, maybe you might die. But now, getting past that, we can find a file with a medical report, or death report I guess, on Wernicke, outlining his death and someone who witnessed him die. So how exactly is he still manipulating the scenes here? How has he been the reason for what's going on here? But now actually in the security room, we can unlock the door we have been trying to get through, but guess what? The big boy decides he wants to come through. So we escape up a vent and out into the hall, eventually running past the fire, getting blown the fuck up, and then getting launched through the window, landing on a massive pile of dead bodies. We fell the exact same distance we would have if we just jumped out the fucking window. Yes, I know we landed on dead bodies, but I'm sure that was not that fun considering we were launched by an explosion. But anyway, now that we've been thrown off into somewhere else we don't know, we need to find an alternate path out of the showers, all the while Walker stalks us. So we need to fully escape, slowly ascending up each floor, getting groped by a man in a cell. Now, funnily enough, as we're going up here, when Walker ripped off a guard's head, Miles made a note questioning that if he isn't the problem that the security force is trying to control, what is the problem in this facility? What was the thing that was killing those guards on that camera? And that's the question that Miles has. Despite Miles wanting to escape, he never really seems to be talking about it. He's always asking questions about what's going on here. What does this mean? Why did this happen? His questions are more tailored like he wants to keep going deeper and deeper, not that he wants to escape. Now, in this room with Walrider scrawled all over the walls, he mentions many of the patients have made reference to a physical presence called the Walrider, but he also found notes about this Walrider in reference to something they found in the mountain, some spirit or demon maybe. But he believes, they're most likely a mass schizophrenic event, delusions from the patients. But Miles does say he saw something here, but believes it was probably a glitch in his camera or the place is finally starting to get to him. A key note here, he's slowly starting to go insane. Now, fun fact, the Walrider does apparently appear here in this section, but I didn't see it at all. Like, even in my recording, scrubbing it, I can't see it. But apparently it does pop up for a couple of seconds and this is the first time you're meant to see it, but I just didn't. So I don't know what to say. And now we head into the sewers, my favorite section, because man, look at it. And it's spooky, very, very spooky. And yes, Walker is down here with us again just to annoy us. And we have this fun task of having to flush all the water out as we cannot go swimming down there because it will taste like shit, probably. And doing that, we can then descend down a snake eater and enter the next part of the sewers, which is even darker. And then we go up another snake eater with the final objective to find a way out of the sewers. What the fuck do you think I've been doing this entire time? But we can see some patients have gotten down here, just walking about, so it's just not the big boy down here. But that does mean there is another way in, as we didn't see these people come in through the way we came. And hey look, a trader who talks about that Wernicke the doctor is dead but his experiments continued, and he questions what does the dead man want with these experiments? A good question. And why have Wernicke's experiments continued on? Why are they so instrumental and important to whoever the creature? But surprisingly, Outlast doesn't really it does hold back here quite well. It has been throwing the occasional body down a chute or whatever that I haven't shown just to make you jump. But here in the water sections, it really does hold back. Eventually, they do throw Walker in at you, so you have to run up some stairs and run away. But it's never really that scary here, and this is actually sort of one of the more chill moments in the game where not a lot is actually happening. Going up this ladder into the next section of the game, we end up in, I don't know what this fucking place is, fucking dungeon? I don't know. But on the wall, we can find something about the rituals, or I guess maybe what they do in bed. Fingers first, then balls, then tongue. Very fun. But slowly we'll start seeing more and more medical equipment pop up with this whole medical bay with beds in it, and you can hear each of the people in the beds talking and whispering stuff as you walk past them. Very creepy, I very like it. And we can find a patient status report by a Rick Traeger, with him doing some work, but he's still new to being a doctor. And he says anywho like me as well, which I kind of like. But according to him, Project Walrider has been a money black hole and he needs to cut some spending to help with that. So I guess he's somewhat high up here, not like a top head honcho, but the people above him are the people controlling the money, and he's being told to cut jobs. And he has cut in total 80 people, which, damn, that's a big cut to the workforce. That saves a lot of money on salaries, pensions, and healthcare, of course. He must be very important to this place, but cutting that many people, maybe that's why they lost control of the entire asylum. And then the next line, he states that he's now learned that someone cannot live without their kidneys. Maybe he must be very new to being a doctor, because I'm sure that would be taught in the textbook immediately. Now, slowly making our way out, some man in a chair decides he wants to make a racket, and a bunch of other guys come to attack us. So we now need to make a grand escape, having a small chase sequence, eventually reaching a dumb waiter. This small lift thing that only rich people normally have has an intercom on it that someone communicates with us, someone who isn't like the others. Who is this person? Well, it's Traeger, the friendly doctor.
You made the right choice here, buddy. Hey, you're that bullshit priest's guy, aren't you? His witness or whatever. You must be exhausted. No, let's take a break, huh, buddy? The old 2-martini lunch. Have a little confab. Blah, blah. Heavier than you look. A little cardio wouldn't kill you. Okay, here we go. Arms and legs inside the car at all times. I love the mountain air up here at night. You want to head out and take a stroll? Go ahead, I'll wait here. Go on, run free. I'm in no hurry. No? All right. Nose to the grindstone, I like that. Okay then, right this way. Ripping that tongue any use anyway. Truth be told, I was just tired of licking my own stance. Here we are then. Thanks so much for coming by. We'll begin your consultation in a moment. It'll just need a second to wash up and, movies. And it'll give us a chance to talk. I'm a bit worried how much time you've been spending with Father Martin. I hope you haven't been letting him confuse you with all his holier-than-thou Bible thumping. No offense to the man, but I sometimes worry he might just be a little bit crazy. It's understandable. People get scared. They're as like to turn to God as anything else. God died with the gold standard. We're on to a more concrete faith now. You have to rob Paul to pay Peter. There's no other way. Murder is the simplest form, but what happens when all money's gone? Well, money becomes a matter of faith. And that's what I'm here for. To make you believe. You paying attention? Don't pass out on me. There's still a lot for you to absorb. Better, right? You understand how we cheat here? We made the consumer into the means of production. This thing is gonna sell itself.
I absolutely adore this scene with Traeger because it is a really fun moment of just completely stripping the player of the control of their movement. You can still look around, see what's going on, but we are forced forward at all times. We're a bit like Mason in the chair in Black Ops 1, moved along in the story, but we are fully confined within this place. And what I really like is it completely strips away your decision. Traeger does go into some dark areas which completely strips the control out of you, meaning that you don't have to build up the courage that I know some people do. They have to build up the courage to go into a dark room or through a small passageway. But here, Traeger forces you to do all of that. And I just really, really like it because it starts to maybe make you panic because you have no control over what's going on. Yeah, it's a glorified cutscene, but how it's framed and how you can still move around, it does make it feel like gameplay and you're physically being restricted. It makes you feel very, I guess, nervous about what's going on and very frightened about what's going on, especially with what Traeger is going on about. And also having Traeger point out the exit to us, asking if we want to go have a little stroll and leave maybe, such a great moment because it really does show he's just fucking with us completely and he is completely deranged and a lunatic. Again, horror isn't only about making you scared, it's about making you feel really uncomfortable and just sick to your stomach. It just makes you want to get away from what's going on, not out of fear, but because just how uncomfy it's making you. And when Traeger does get us in for his examination, slowly selecting his tools, finding the one he wants, and of course, popping the fucking fingers off, it's just this great sickening moment, and I love it. Again, horror isn't only about making you scared, it's about making you feel really uncomfortable. And one thing that horror sometimes forget it can do is make you feel sick, because that makes you feel uncomfortable as well. Anything that makes you feel uncomfortable can be defined as a horrific experience. And I just fucking love it how Traeger gently caresses your hand, inspecting each of your fingers, then slowly getting different tools, measuring them up, seeing how he wants to do it, and then even grabbing his fucking snippers out of the toilet. Just great, man. I love it. And then, of course, he then pops our fingers off, just completely slicing them off, and we can see the bone and everything. Now, of course, when I see this scene, it makes me think of Cutie Pie saying we can't jerk off anymore. But I do really like it, and personally, it does make me feel really fucking ill. That is more a personal experience because when I was younger, I remember I was fucking around with a skateboard and doors, and we had heavy doors that would slam shut because they were fire doors basically in our old house. And I remember I fell backwards and I slammed my fingers into the door, and it just fucking cracked all of my nails off, really fucking hurt my fingers. And it's just always made me feel iffy around crush injuries and when you get your shit slammed or when your fingers just get sort of hit. Just hate it. It's always something that just makes me feel ill because I just remember how much that fucking hurt at the time. But yeah, this is a great moment and it's just great gore. Yeah, it's a bit gore porny a la Saw style, but the game knows not to overdo it and slowly allows Traeger to go through his tools and then has the big payoff where he snips the fingers off, decks you in the head and then snips the other ones off. It's just great. I really, really like it. But eventually we escape from our chair, and instead of trying to, I don't know, maybe rinse the wound off a bit, maybe clean it a little bit, maybe find something to wrap it in, we immediately just grab our camera after throwing up and just start recording and then just carry on with our day. One complaint I'm going to have about this is I don't like how the injuries that Miles sustains have no immediate issues that arise from them. Remember, at this point, Miles has been thrown through a window and has glass in his head and has cracked a couple of ribs. He's been knocked out a couple of times. He's probably got a concussion at this point. And now he's just had his fingers completely snipped off. And it doesn't change the gameplay in any meaningful way. He is beaten the shit out of, and he just walks it off like nothing. Even him feeling pain, it's not that apparent that he's actually been hurt. Yeah, he does throw up and you can see his fingers missing, but after this point, it just never really is touched upon at all. It's never reinforced and shown that he's suffering from the injuries. He goes through the rest of the game, which at this point is a couple of hours still, missing fingers, just bleeding everywhere. You might question, what would I rather them do? What would I like to see? I know this game was made fucking dirt cheap, but to me, these injuries should limit gameplay in some way, in a fun way, I think. Would it be annoying? Yes, but I think it would enhance the horror even more, adding repercussions to what has happened. For fuck's sake, the DLC, by the way, does this. When the character in the DLC injures his leg, it affects how you move. Visually, we still see that he's injured and it takes a while for him to recover and he's able to walk normally again, which I really, really like. What do I think should happen here? Well, the fact that Miles doesn't do anything to stop the bleeding, he doesn't try cover it up or anything, I actually think what would be a really cool thing is that his blood keeps dripping on the floor, which would allow smarter enemies, say Traeger, to track you down. I feel like this would be such a cool mechanic to do, and it would just add so much to the cat and mouse gameplay, especially if you use Traeger more and more to give a very different experience to Walker. I think Walker, especially if they were to make, I'm going to say, a remake of this game. I don't think this game needs a remake, but just play with me here. Imagine in a remake, they increase and improve the amount that the Walker and Traeger, we'll call them Stalker sections, have gameplay wise. I think Walker physically should be able to do a lot more. Imagine if he just starts picking shit up or punching through doors in one hit, or just punching through a wall like Jack Baker does in Resident Evil 7 to mix up the gameplay a bit more. I feel like he should be able to do a hell of a lot more with his strength, while I think Traeger should use his intelligence a lot more. And I think the blood thing here would be a great way to enhance that. Now, if we're not going to do that, because of course this game was made in 2013, what is a simpler change that I think would have been way better? Well, I think Traeger should have just cut one of our hands off. And this should have made that you had to juggle with holding the camera and then interacting with stuff in the world. So if you were holding the camera and you wanted to open the door, well, you'd have to put the camera away, open the door, then pick the camera back up. Limit you in how you act. Would this get annoying? Yes, but that's the point. It's meant to make it difficult. You have to fiddle with stuff to do more stuff. Imagine you're in a chase and you've got the camera up in night vision. Oh shit, there's a door. But you can't open the door. You have to take the camera off so you can grab the fucking knob so you can twist it and open it. I just think it would add so much more and just make the game feel not only more realistic, but more horrifying in a way that Miles is physically just dealing with these things. Also, I just feel like these injuries should have more of an effect. I think they should make, when Miles injures his ribs, he should not be able to run at full speed constantly. I think he should run out of breath occasionally. But they are nitpicks. Again, I understand why they didn't do this, because it is technically like an annoyance to the player. But I just think it would add so much to the game and make these injuries that he sustains feel way more impactful and actually add to the horror he is facing. Remember, this guy cut parts of his body off and he just brushes it off. But anyway, this injury, despite how horrifying it is and disgusting it is to me, is just ignored for the rest of the game, and Miles goes on with his day. Now, after escaping the chair, we can find another patient hooked up to a rather interesting looking bed, but he claims that he is not a patient, but was an executive for the asylum. Like Traeger. So Traeger was an executive, but Traeger got the treatment. He got the dream therapy treatment with the morphogenic engine, and now he's too alive, filled with Wernicke's nightmares. What the fuck does that mean? And this treatment they have been doing has been apparently working too well, and now that they have lost complete control over the patients. And now he just starts screaming for Traeger, so we kind of just have to run away. But to get out of here, we need to find an elevator key, which, yes, is another fucking goddamn fetch quest. This is another complaint I will always have about all of these cat and mouse horror games. They rely way too heavily on fetch quest style puzzles within their cat and mouse gameplay to make it engaging. This was a complaint I had about Alien Isolation, where you had to find this item, where you had to do this thing, where you had to go over here and grab this key card to then unlock this door that allowed you to get a code to get over there and get that security panel. In Outlast, they do it as well. In Amnesia, they did it as well. I just feel like game developers just need to add more styles of puzzles for games like this, or they need to make the fetch quests more interactable in a way to hide that. Comparing Outlast to Alien Isolation, which is somewhat of a fair comparison considering there's only a year gap between them, it's crazy the amount of interactivity that game had compared to this, because Outlast is stupid linear, that it's actually, the puzzles that they have are basically all the same. But of course, I would not want them to add combat, because that would take away from what the game's horror truly is. If I could just put a bullet in Traeger's head and stun him for 10 seconds, that doesn't make him scary anymore. But these fucking roadblock puzzles, fetch quest puzzles are so common, and they're the only puzzle that these style of horror games really know what to do with and really only ever used. Amnesia used them a lot. Outlast used them a lot. Alien Isolation uses them a lot. And normally a lot of these games try to add more survival horror aspects, like adding guns, like Amnesia the bunker has a gun in it. Alien Isolation has way too many fucking guns and equipment in it, in my opinion. They try to change entirely what the game is to make it more fun. But Outlast, from a fundamental standpoint, does stick to its guns and does remain entirely a almost cat and mouse style horror game. How do you improve that? How do you make this better? I don't know. I'm not a game designer, but you need to make the gameplay more varied within the puzzles to make it more fun. That's either through making the enemies more different in how they act, because Traeger and Walker act exactly the same and do the exact same things, or you do it through level design if you're not going to add other puzzles and other styles of gameplay. And I'm sure Outlast might actually fall into this trap, considering they've made 3 games now. The first game, second game, and Trials, which all stick to this style of gameplay. And I'm sure when they've gotten to the actual third Outlast game, the fourth, fifth game, they might start adding more combat stuff to the game, which I would hate. But I really do hope they stick to their guns and remain on this fundamental style. Side note, I'd actually fucking love to go through fucking Outlast Trials, because I found that game really fun and would love to analyze how they improved the gameplay from the first games and actually improved this style of gameplay and showed that it can work. But that's mainly due to how it uses multiplayer stuff to improve it. But yeah, unfortunately, the OG Outlast is now extremely dated in comparison to newer games that have been made and have significantly improved upon this style of horror. Alien Isolation, Outlast 2, Soma, Amnesia the Bunker. That's kind of the problem. It's just dated. And again, this game was made on the budget of a Kit Kat and a packet of Quavers. It was made for $1.4 million. That is mental. That budget is mentally low, even for the time.
Yeah.
This game had a budget that was 100 times smaller than Dead Space 3. Just think about that. Honestly, it is kind of sad how bloated video game budgets are now, because I'm sure when Outlast 3 comes out, it will somehow cost like 50 million and it will still be just kind of on par with the first 2 games. And it's like, what the fuck did you spend all the money on? Anyway, but let's get back to finding the key, which we can find very easily on a key rack here. And taking it back to the elevator, of course, Edward Scissorhands wants to scrap. But of course, he doesn't understand that elevator go up and elevator goes down and he gets stuck and then gets crushed again. Why is it all crush injuries? I fucking hate them. But of course, we were just trying to leave and we can see the exit from here, but we can't open the gate or the door to the elevator because we are still too high up. So we now have to go.
Leave my
up a
baby
floor
alone.
to
She just wants to
forward
come in.
past the exit. And Miles has some thoughts about killing Traeger. How to make
No,
Traeger
squeeze.
juice. Step 1, squeeze. Okay, brother has completely lost it.
What do you want?
Seems like our investigative journalist is going a little bit loco. Hope he doesn't become just like those who are patients here. You know, he becomes one of the
I
crazy
love my
people.
baby.
He
Yo.
becomes the monster he was trying to expose. Ooh. But now on this new floor, we begin navigating again through it to find a way to that exit. But of course, Father Martin is here again. And apparently, we are... All right, lad, calm down. We're not that close. You're not my type. And he tells us that we need to head on out to the courtyard, which leads us to the kitchen. And damn, someone's definitely been cooking in here. And the guy sitting on the table here talks about some shit and how if we want to survive, we need to exit. But we need to go find the sprinkler system, which now is another section with the big guy, which we need to find the sprinkler system to turn it on while avoiding Walker. Eventually, though, we turn them off, fuck off Walker, and then we escape the kitchen into the yard, which is extremely fucking dark. Very,
As she
very,
looks at
very
me when
dark,
she wants
but
to
also
come
a
in.
bit lightning-y, which every so often the lightning will strike and we will be able to see everything around us. But here you might notice there's some floaty boys floating about. Some ghosts or some shit. These are the wall riders, I think. I don't really know. They don't really do anything to us other than just kind of make noises. But we need to find another key, so we quickly go grab that key and then we can unlock this locked door. I am seeing a pattern here. And that same spirit we just saw outside attacks us again and fucking just leaves us alone. I don't really, jump scare. But now we enter another part of the courtyard. And by the way, Miles believes that he saw the wall rider, as I stated, and he prays to God for help. I don't think he's going to help you, I'll be honest. But now we continue on to another part of the courtyard. God damn, this place is fucking huge. Clambering up the building onto the roof and then scaling into a different part of the courtyard. Fucking hell, how big of a courtyard is this? But within this part of the courtyard, the big boy Walker decides he wants to appear again and he starts chasing us a bit. But now we finally reach the female ward, which, we haven't seen any women yet, have we? They've all been males because we've all been seeing cock and balls. A real sausage party. So hey, having some women in the mix would be nice. There is no women in this game. And there is a reason for that, and it's very interesting. But here we meet Father Martin again, and he's talking about how we saw the Wall Rider and that we are so close, and that Revelation is ahead. We're gonna have to talk about Revelation again. I just talked about this shit for like 3 hours. God's sake. TLDR, Revelation is the part of the Bible which most often is referenced as it mentions the end of the world and what going to come when the fucking four horsemen ride, that whole part of the Bible. So apparently to Father Martin here, the world is going to end and the Wool Rider is the one that's going to bring it. Wool Rider, horseman. Okay, I see it. But now making our way through the female ward, we need to find someone. We find that someone is doing a twat lap around the place, and we need to do this weird puzzle with some fuses for some reason to unlock something, so we can grab a key that I'm sure we just couldn't reach through the fucking grate and grab. But of course, once we do that, the key decides it wants to fuck off somewhere else downstairs, down the chute. So we have to go downstairs, retrieve the key, and man, this entire section is just kind of long, I will be honest. And
That's
the
what
game
I needed to
really did, at
feel
this point, I
better.
remember specifically, really started to tone down for me. I still found it interesting.
Better be the
but
good.
it felt like the game
It better
was starting to
be.
bloat
Yeah, it'll be the
itself for
toppings.
no real
Better be
reason.
good ass
Horror
pizza
games
though.
always have this issue. I don't know why, but I understand why. They want to extend the game as much as possible. to
No,
make it
that
feel like
cheap
it's
ass
worth
Little
buying the
Caesars
game, because
cardboard
longer
pizza.
playtime is better for, money on investment. You don't want to spend full price on
Dude,
the game and the
so
game
you know-
is only 8 hours and you feel like you kind of wasted your money because
Shut up, I don't give a shit about that trend.
Now I'm someone that plays all
They
the
raised the
games. Horror
prices.
games that are like an hour long, games that are 20-hour long Sony.
Let's speak about Little Caesars.
JRPGs
My
that are
God,
way longer
my
than
parents
they
bought
need to
Little
be, like 10
Caesars.
times.
I don't know what it is, but
And to me, runtime
that
never
that
matters.
the
To
pizza
me,
literally
a
left me in the
horror game
bathroom for
is
like
better
solid
story
30
longer.
minutes,
I'd rather
man.
Outlast be
I'm
more
like,
replayable
the
and
fuck? Not to
make
mention when I ate it
like
too.
horror
Something
ride,
felt
be like
off.
20
Like
hours
they
long,
changed
way
this.
too bloated and kind of gets on my nerves about.
I mean, I'm
dragged out
starting to
scenes,
think that
like
no,
a lot
but
of
that did.
games do sometimes. I'm not pointing any fingers, but
That was like
I-
it came out of
some
the
games
oven.
just
That's
way
the
too long
thing.
for what they are.
Like
But
my
here,
parents
rather
bought
than
that
kind of
straight from Little
spend the
Caesars
game
out of the
just
oven.
fucking around with you by
And I
killing
wouldn't say it's the
videos
cheese.
before
I would
making
say
it
it was the
content,
sauce.
it's
The
just
sauce
very
tasted a
bloat
bit
entirely. Is there a problem?
different.
Not really. The game is still fucking short, but I do think it's kind of a weird thing to do, especially with this game, in how it wants to keep that.
Probably,
horror
yeah.
constantly
Like
moving.
I want to give it a
This
chance to
entire
see if it was the
section
case,
kind
but
of
just
irritates me.
like,
I don't really remember any
dude,
of it.
that
I
was
completely
terrible
stopped being
moment, man.
scared as
Like,
well
what the
of the game.
fuck?
But at one point, we tried to jump across a big old broken part of the floor.
Like
We
I
pulled it
ate
off,
Little
enough,
Caesars
and we
before,
dropped
and
the
I had
camera.
no
Oh,
issues,
no.
but
And
that
this
one
section, we
time
don't
last
have the
week,
camera.
it
And
was
I
just
actually thought, holy shit,
bad.
this might be a good section because we now need to go retrieve said camera. It's a good little shake up, and it takes something that you've gotten used to having, the night vision, away from you. So now you have to navigate without using it, which is really cool in my opinion. I really do like when horror games do this, when they take stuff away from you and you have to figure out how to get around these problems without having them. Problem is, Outlast doesn't really throw anything at you for this section. It's a very straight beeline to grab
Preferred
the camera.
didn't happen,
And my one
but
complaint
sure.
is this section doesn't last long enough. I know I'm saying I want this to be longer, but if they took away a lot of the other fat fluff parts, like dealing with keys and shit that is just pointless, and actually extended this section a bit more and added, say, a small stalker section into it, great, I would love that. The game doesn't do that. But once we do get the camera back, it actually does have a small thing I love. A nice, massive fucking...
Also, I have
crack.
this
I know, mate, I
specific
love a good
scam
design.
caller that
The
keeps on
crack
calling
the
me.
camera
I'm
screen
surprised
on
the dude has not
camera
given up yet.
actually is such a great thing because it lasts for the rest of the game.
Like, it's-
And not only is it a massive crack that distorts your vision, occasionally the camera will freak out as, of course, it's been damaged by you dropping it.
Yeah, but like
occasionally
it's
you'll
literally the
completely lose
exact
vision
same
while
dude.
using it,
The
making
exact
the
same
question
one.
of should I be using
And
the
I'm
camera
like,
at all times actually be raised to you.
I
really
mean,
like this
yeah,
game.
it
I
is
just
true. It's
like
like the
it. I
easiest
like that the
paycheck
camera
right
gets
there.
damaged. I really
The
like
answer
that, and I
phone
wish they
calls
would
and all, but
damage
just
it
like, dude,
more.
leave me alone.
Maybe make the
can do
fucking
this all
light
day.
switches start flickering constantly when you're using it, or flickering on and off random intervals when you're
He
using it,
uses
just to make it
different
more
phones.
scary. I would love that. But
He
with
uses
Retrieve,
different
we now
phone
go back to
numbers.
where we fell and actually make the jump this time. That was kind of stupid by our main guy. But now getting back to a more civilized looking part of the building, and here, guess who's back? Back again. Big
No,
fucking
that's
guy.
what I do. Because as soon as I hear his voice, I'm like, oh,
Time,
hang on,
but
that's
to be honest,
him.
I think Trey was killed way too early, and I would have liked to have him a bit longer. We now find another patient.
I just say yellow, and there's a long pause, and he goes, he says my name, and no, he just says hello. No. He doesn't say my name. He says, hello, and then he says, hello, Grilder and all that stuff. He immediately knows who it is. I'm like, most people that call me say, is this Grilder and all that stuff. But no, he just goes like, hello, Grilder. And I'm like, oh.
And when he discovered that only a
Fuck you.
subject exposed to enough horror was capable of activating the morphogenic engine, and thus the patients have all been tests for this engine. They've been trying to harness whatever this thing is, exposing
Who knows? I mean, he's probably going through a long ass list and keeps getting hanged up, and also just like, all right, next one, do this again tomorrow. Okay. Funny enough, I'm not even like spending money. Usually he calls when I spend money, but I haven't spent money in the like last couple of days, so it's like, so why are you calling me? Go away.
Use the morphogenic engine.
It's true.
To witness enough of it to try make them capable of linking with this engine.
Hello, Alaran.
Into the projection room now, we can grab the key that we need and head back and
How
make
is?
our way up, finally meeting Father Martin.
Cool. He has never completed anything. Oh wow, Juan. We did 3D modeling? Now that I'm curious to see. You still have the files? Boo! Oh yeah, you should look up back. You should keep all your artwork and look back at it. Fucking Kill doesn't do that shit. I would love to see that shit. No, I want to see the 3D modeling stuff. I don't give a shit about the stuff that you drew. I still want to see it. Yeah, you should.
And he burns himself.
I want to see a 3D stuff. I want to judge you.
God,
Shit.
hoping his followers, which include us, as we are one of his apostles, would be set free and allowed to escape. Now we are given another key, which, after a small chase again with the big boy, we enter the elevator and it takes us all the way down into the secret government fucking Godzilla.
Wow, so enthusiastic to try new things. Kill, he's so happy.
So many notes and so many reports outlining the things that
Kill be like, man, you should try new things, try new food, try new this and that. Also, Kill, I don't do any of that.
We do see the remnant of some fight occurring with blood, bodies smeared absolutely everywhere.
No. How long did you give it a try? If you just gave it for 1 day or maybe 2 days, no. That type of shit has to be like.
We couldn't see on the camera is down here. And yes, he is. The chase ensues, and it completely confirms that this ghost-ass looking thing is the Wall Rider. And eventually, running away from him, we will get caught between and Slim Shady. And Slim Shady decides he wants to absolutely clot the shit out of the big boy. So after he kills him, we run away a bit more, and then later.
Really, it just peels your skin off just like that?
Who was dead, but he isn't. And apparently, this was all caused by a man called Billy, one of the patients who apparently has linked.
The thing is, how long did that person have it on there for? If it was like maybe 1 second, sure, but it looks like he had it there for more than 1 second.
Killed except him, so maybe he is protecting him. But when he asks us to kill the Wall Rider, that's asking us to kill Billy, severing the connection between the two by turning off the life support. Easy enough.
Makes me want to try it even more.
Stalked by the Wall Rider, and I actually really like this section, and I do like the Wall Rider. I think it's a very cool
science
thing that is scary, but not visually scary. And I do kind of wish it wasn't just chase section.
That's so cruel. You're so cruel, dog. Damn, what the fuck? You hang out with Kill. You hang out with Kill too much, man.
It's very linear.
I know.
Like it, and it has a main, of course, fetch quest style puzzle.
I know it's a historical fact, but the way you use it as a joke, it's just like, oh, okay, calm down.
And we can see also Billy in here, and bro does look kind of comfy, I can't lie.
Bombastic side eye right there.
Or Billy, I guess, tries to stop us. We get some notes on what Miles thinks about all this shit going on and what he sees. Well, he sees the Wall Rider and the Morphogenic Engine as a massive amount of waste. The amount of shit, money, and energy required to keep Billy alive and keep this thing active and usable, he just sees as waste, and he does see as pointless. I'm sure the CIA do like it though. But now Miles turns off all the systems and thus kills Billy, either out of kindness, maybe he feels bad for Billy, or because he's terrified of the Wall Rider and doesn't want to be killed by it. But Billy, or the Wall Rider, ain't letting us go that easily, and he's going to absolutely smack the shit out of us. And he attacks us so much, he gravely injures us.
Wouldn't that be demanding for your PDC?
But now we are free and we can slowly limp our way away and try escape from the asylum.
Oh man.
And we became the Wall Rider. We became its host, becoming one of the very monsters that were created in
Yes,
this
I am
facility,
looking.
as we were exposed to some of the worst horrors imaginable. And I do like that.
Yeah.
It's a good moment. Some people do have the theory that Miles is like completely deranged and he was the perfect candidate to bind with the Morphogenic Engine because he was already completely deranged, exposed to so much horror as a journalist. I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that all of these monsters and shit that Wernicke and his research created on the normal person would scare them so much and instill so much fear and horror within them that they become the perfect vessel for the Wall Rider and able to use and link with the Morphogenic Engine. As Miles here doesn't require any sort of life support whatsoever, despite being bonded with the Wall Rider. And in the end here, we don't actually know what happens to Miles. We can assume that the Wall Rider took over him, used him as its vessel or whatever. But if Miles' physical form dies here with the gunshots, or if the Wall Rider saves him, we don't know, as that ends Outlast. By the way, if you're wondering why there was no women, it's because the Wall Rider was causing phantom pregnancies in women, killing them, and it prevented them from being a host because the Wall Rider almost became a child to them. Kind of weird, but that's why there's no women. But anyway, what do I think of Outlast overall as a game? Outlast is a fascinating game to actually look back on, because from a game design standpoint, I don't think it does anything revolutionary at all. It doesn't redefine horror or introduce mechanics that would completely change the genre forever, and games that follow up from it would utilize and be inspired from. It doesn't evolve the formula in the same way, or doesn't popularize a certain style of gameplay that, say, something like Amnesia did with the cat and mouse style of horror game and a lack of weapons. Instead, it takes the ideas that have been already worked and proven to work and executes them incredibly well. Outlast is a simple horror game built around running, hiding, and managing your camera and surviving, of course. And while that simplicity does make it very approachable to me, looking at it from an individual standpoint, looking at it as a game on its own, my critical brain sees it as a way that the game is being held back. To me, Outlast leans far too heavily on jump scares and scripted chase sequences to make it feel like a horror game that is the best or embodies the best of the genre. And after a while, those jump scares, those chase sequences, all that shit that the game throws at us, after a while, their impact was just less and less. And by the end, I wasn't scared of anything in the game anymore. I was just expecting the next thing to pop up. So why is Outlast remembered so fondly? Why is it the game? Why do so many people point to it as the scariest horror game? I think the answer has less to do with the innovation and the game itself, and more to do when the game released and the timing it released in. When Outlast released, horror games were in a bit of a weird place. They were kind of in a transitional period. The biggest franchises at the time, mainly Resident Evil and Dead Space, because Silent Hill was currently killing itself by releasing spin-off after spin-off that no one liked. These two horror franchises, they were shifting further towards action. We had RE5 in 2008, RE6 in 2012, and in 2013, we would have Dead Space 3. The games were leaning more to action horror. That was becoming the more popular gameplay style. And the game that I think embodies the best traditional cat and mouse horror style game, Amnesia, only had a PC release. Amnesia: The Dark Descent never came to the current consoles that was with its generation. It never came to the 360 or the PS3. I think it's on newer gen consoles, but at the time, Amnesia was only a PC game. And in 2010 to I'd say 15, PC and console were wildly different player bases. And console gaming was more popular, I think, at the time than PC gaming, especially here in the West. I don't remember any of my friends growing up with PC apart from like one of them. Most of them had consoles, myself included. And the fact that Amnesia didn't have a console release, I think severely limited the impact it had. Amnesia, I think, is kind of the forgotten game. Not a lot of people that were playing games at the times really played it because they didn't have a PC. Most of them only know about the game through Let's Plays, I think. So that style of horror was never really pushed to a wider audience, to the console market. So when other developers started going in the action route and they started selling better and better, RE5 was the best-selling Resident Evil game of all time. Then they made RE6 and that didn't do as well, but it still sold really, really well. And obviously EA was copying basically Resident Evil's homework, so they made Dead Space 3. The sales were showing that action was more popular. But I think that's kind of an unfair thing to point out because there was no big game that embodied this style of horror. The traditional cat and mouse, no guns, no action horror. So when Outlast did arrive on consoles, it first released on PC in 2013, late 2013, and then released on consoles mid-2014. It brought a style of horror that was absent on consoles to a much wider audience.
The fact that you hear
it
that
proved
is very
and
stupid.
showed that traditional survival
Like you
horror
said, if I'm
experience that
quiet, then the
focuses on hiding
Discord's
and
gonna try to
running
pick up
away
background
could
noise
be a
for
major
whatever
success.
reason.
Outlast sold really, really well, like incredibly well. And I think it released at the exact right moment. 2013 and 2014, I think, was a very pivotal year, not only within gaming, but also within the content creation world, YouTube, Twitch streaming, and so on. 2013, 2014 is the transition year from the Xbox 360 PS3 generation to the Xbox One PS4 generation. So Outlast was kind of positioned perfectly to catch as many players as possible. It got all the people that were getting into gaming with the new generation, and of course the people that were still on the old generation. It was able to spread a very wide reach, and with it being free on PlayStation Plus when it first came out, its reach was monumental. Then you combine that with it being almost one of the first big viral horror games there was. I know there was others like Slender the 8 Page. Even looking at it now, I see it as that. It is the perfect for Let's Plays, funny moment, Twitch streams, you name it, they do it. For fuck's sake, streamers still to this day play through Outlast. It is the perfect game for this. Outlast is the perfect game to introduce millions of people to horror. It, to me, is the perfect gateway horror game. It isn't complex, it isn't overly ambitious, it's simple, and it focuses on what makes horror so great. To me, it's the one horror game that I think really did prove that horror deserves to be more respected and not treated like an afterthought in an action game. Yes, other games did release very soon after this, games like Alien Isolation, which, hey, I've made a video on already, but those games I have my own complaints with. My one complaint about Outlast, honestly, is it's too simple. That's it. But that's me comparing it to the greats of this genre. Silent Hill 2, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Dead Space 1 and 2. I'm comparing it to my favorite horror games, but it still, I think, is the best horror game to start with. If I had to suggest one horror game to anyone, I think I would suggest Outlast. I think it just embodies perfectly what horror in gaming is. It respects its roots, it respects the genre, and it makes sure that it gets it right. And I think that's the important part. Now, while I don't think personally Outlast belongs alongside like the true innovators of the genre, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and Amnesia. I absolutely understand why it's remembered so fondly. It's a game that everyone played. It's a game that came out at the perfect time, and it's a game that many started their horror journeys with. To me, Outlast Legacy wasn't my first horror game. It wasn't the game that I remember fondly from my childhood like my friend previously did. To me, its legacy is that it proved that there was still massive potential within traditional style horror games, especially in the AAA market. And fuck me, I think a shit ton of indie games are inspired by what Outlast laid down. Honestly, I feel like every mascot horror game that doesn't have combat in it, like Poppy's Playtime, fucking any of the other shit horror games that are not good, are probably inspired by Outlast in some way. But that's the important part for me about Outlast. Despite it not being my favorite horror game, I still think it's an incredibly important horror game that the industry needed to have. A game made from a small indie studio that could rival big AAA games in sales and prove that the traditional and classic style horror game that was slowly being pushed to the side still could work. It's not a game that innovates, but it's one that defines, embodies the genre entirely. It was the right game at the right time. And sometimes that itself is enough for a game to be defined as a great game at that, to some, the best game. But what I find interesting is the irony of Outlast itself is within the game's story. The game's story is all about what happens when corporations and those in power become so consumed by greed, chasing results and profits above everything else, and it gets to the point that people become disposable, and the very thing that they built is corrupted beyond recognition. The asylum at one point was built to help people, is corrupted so much that it's used as a place to experiment on people. And looking at the horror genre, especially in 2010's time, it's hard to not see a strange parallel between the game and real life. Many of the biggest horror franchises, as I mentioned, were moving further and further into action in an attempt to appeal to a wider audience, often sacrificing the identity that made them the great games they were in the first place. Resident Evil, in my opinion, 4 onwards, really did lose its own identity in chasing action. Dead Space became a complete shell of its former self with Dead Space 3, a game that honestly is unrecognizable to the 2 games that came before it. And there is probably a couple of other horror games that I haven't mentioned. A couple of the Silent Hill spin-offs probably were more actiony. I haven't played them all. I do want to play them all. But it was clear that these games were sacrificing their integrity and what they represented to chase money. They sacrificed their very identity for money. And Outlast itself didn't do that. It didn't chase trends, it embraced the foundations of the games that had already established and shown what makes these games great. It trusted that traditional horror still had an audience and was rewarded with enormous success. Whether intentionally or not, there's something very poetic about the game's story. I don't know if the devs at Red Barrels saw what was happening in the games industry when Resident Evil 5 came out and when Resident Evil 6 was being talked about and Dead Space 3 was being talked about, and whether they wrote the story and the themes of this game around that. I don't know, but I think it's very clear to see a strong parallel between them. The game itself is a warning against the consequences of chasing the profit at the expense of identity and humanity. And Outlast itself as a product went against that very idea. It didn't chase a trend to try make as much money as possible. It stayed true to itself and in the end was rewarded with an immense amount of success, just because it refused to abandon the identity of the genre it belonged to, creating a game that is unwavering in its vision, a game that embodies artistic integrity. Outlast to me is the true embodiment of what a game should be: a creative drive, a passion for a genre or storytelling, but most importantly, a true passion for creating art. Wait, there's more to the video? Yeah, I could actually make this entire DLC its own video, but fuck it, let's just all do it in one. Let's talk about Whistleblower now. Whistleblower is actually really interesting to talk about because with how much of a struggle it was to get the original game actually made, as they were trying to secure funding through government programs, and this game genuinely is almost a miracle it was made in the first place. Again, Outlast, the original, had a budget of $1.4 million Canadian, that is. This game was very lucky that it was able to secure the funding it did, because it was able to get a lot of government grants and funding. A lot of it was from government programs, and getting that for a horror game seems very difficult. Of course, the developers also put all of their life savings into it, so they genuinely did believe and wanted this game to do well. And after the game came out and sold a boatload of copies, becoming one of the best-selling games of that year, and 2013 was a pretty stacked year, the devs over at Red Barrels wanted to move forward with expanding the world and expanding the franchise a bit more. And of course, with this, there comes a couple of options. You could do a full-on sequel that innovates the game, changes things up, or you could do a completely new game that is completely different, a entirely different franchise, could still push the company forward. Now, the developers did want to follow up Outlast. They specifically wanted to follow up the world of Outlast and expand the world's lore even more. And while a sequel was definitely a consideration, they thought of a much more interesting way to actually use the base game and tell a much wider story using the first game itself. This would not only allow them to reuse a lot of the base game's stuff, models, characters, environments, just being able to make smart decisions, but it would also allow for a longer period of time to start working on a sequel. So instead of choosing to rush into a sequel and maybe missing the point of what people loved about the first game, the devs chose to focus on making an expansion slash DLC. I see it more as an expansion because it basically almost doubles the playtime of the game with the Whistleblower addition to the game. Outlast Whistleblower is often seen as the best part of the entire Outlast franchise for many, many different reasons. Outlast, I hate to say it, the original game, is not a perfect game. No game is, but Outlast does have some big issues with it. It's a game of very high highs, but also some fairly low lows at times. Repetitive gameplay loops, somewhat of a bloated single-player campaign that sometimes just feels like it's wasting your time, and of course some simplistic enemy AI design. Outlast is a game that gets less scary as the time goes on, as the game keeps trying to one-up itself. But I think once the devs did move on to making a DLC and wanting to make almost a different experience using the game, they identified many things that players loved and also things that players took issue with. Whistleblower is a much more streamlined experience. Both Whistleblower and the original Outlast, to me, both have equal stories within them. To be honest, you could argue that Whistleblower has a better story than Outlast 1. Outlast 1 does have more gameplay, but it's a lot more repetitive. Whistleblower never feels like it's wasting your time. But I think one thing that the devs really did identify that people really liked was the characters and the enemies that we face within Outlast. People fell in love with these designs. Walker, more specifically Chris Walker, the big guy, and Traeger, the doctor. This not only is helped via the performances and the voice performance of Traeger, for example, who just make you want to keep looking at him, but they are so intimidating that they add to that horror that makes the game so fun in the first place. And I think Whistleblower wanted to focus on this. They wanted to focus on the horror part of Outlast and improve it as much as possible, streamlining the game but making sure that they're able to keep the horror there and make it even scarier. Now, the story this time, again, focuses more about what happened within the asylum. If the base game story was about discovering what happened, this story is about truly what happened. We will be able to see it from the perspective of someone as the asylum started to fall. Miles arrived hours after shit hit the fan, but we are going to literally watch the shit hit the fan. And I think that's a really interesting way to do it because it allows any questions that you have to be answered within a DLC that fills in the gaps that you had from the base game. But also, if you only played the DLC, you would have questions that would be filled by the base game. The pair of them coexist perfectly, in my opinion. Now, Whistleblower isn't revolutionary at all. I will state this now. It doesn't completely change the gameplay up. It doesn't help to fix a lot of the issues that the game has, and it doesn't add an insane amount of content to the game. It's basically Outlast again, but a little bit better in a way. The main things that you can see that have changed is that the devs really did learn the lessons from the first Outlast game. They really did look at the complaints and focus on changing those things and improving aspects within their game design, which I really like to see within this DLC that was made a year later, that they're able to improve it this much. But again, this is a DLC. Outlast they can't completely change the entire engine and how the game works. They can't reinvent the wheel. So instead, they decide to focus on what was great and improve that, learning how to make it better. So when they do eventually come around to a sequel, they can make the best game they can possible. And all I'll say is Whistleblower from start to finish is absolutely amazing. It's a treat to play, and it truly is the best part of Outlast. And its opening is just as interesting as the base game, with us waking up in quite the interesting looking cinema system, being greeted by a man in blue, and he is quite the freak himself.
Open those eyes. You don't have to wake up, but open your eyes. What's the matter? Somebody hit you? Here. Let me help.
It appears we are one of those patients within the asylum being exposed to these weird Rorschach experiments. But something has gone wrong with Billy, and we cut to 2 hours earlier, now seeing the email that Miles received from the whistleblower. Hey, name of the DLC, do you get it? We are playing the role of the whistleblower who sent this email out and got Miles to investigate the asylum in the first place. But who are we? Well, we are Waylon Park, who was a man who was doing a small 2-week job for this place. But now we are called over to do our job. What is that job exactly? Well, it's coding. You can tell this is an older game, by the way, because fuck me, getting a job for coding, that's almost impossible now. Mainly to do is coding associated with the morphogenic engine, sorting out all the technical shit. But here we see that the scientists bring in the next subject, a man called Eddie Glueskin, with him exclaiming that they are going to rape him. It's a bit extreme, but eventually they hook him up and we can then connect to the engine so we can watch as the process ensues. Despite this being our job, we are still a little bit scared of it. Again, we've only been here for 2 weeks at this point. But after fulfilling our job of connecting Eddie to the engine, we are now told to leave and we head back to grab our laptop. But of course, that little email that we sent has been completely tracked, and immediately the security forces have found us. And Jeremy Blair here now has us admitted into the asylum and signed up into the morphogenic engine program. And this does a really good job, in my opinion, of truly showing how corrupt the Murkoff Foundation was in this game. The emails that we find, yeah, they'd explain that they were covering shit up, they were involved with the government, the CIA, FBI, whatever else, and doing some really shady shit. But the fact that a man who came here for a temporary job role, because he stuck his neck out, he saw something bad and wanted to make a change and try expose bad people, is now being admitted into the asylum and being put into a test that is literally killing people by the higher ups, the men with the money, just truly shows how morally bankrupt and completely devoid of humanity the people that run the Murkoff Foundation truly are. And I fucking love that, because again, we don't really see a lot of those emails within this DLC. A lot of those are saved for the base game. So if you have questions about, oh, what were they doing before this? How did it lead to this? Like, why is the government and stuff not getting involved? You find that out in the base game. It just does such a good job of tying back into the base game. This truly is what a DLC or an expansion should be. It adds meaningful context, depth, and story to the game to make it feel a lot more lived in. And it also improves the base game just because it exists. But yes, Waylon here has now been admitted to be part of this program as they want to get rid of him. But with us returning to our little cinema room, we see that our neighbors get in a bit of a scrap with the Wall Rider, who I think is Billy, and we now have to escape, grabbing a camera, of course, giving us the camera again so we can see in the dark. And Waylon makes notes just like Miles, and what I like is that they're very different. Unlike Miles, who tries to sound cool and quippy and sarcastic at times, he tries to sound like a hero. Waylon just sounds fucking terrified at all times. What's really interesting is Miles starts as a very sort of suave, smooth talking reporter, and he slowly loses his mind. Waylon starts terrified, and he knows he's lost his mind for the shit he's had to do already. And I just love that they're able to convey such different characters within these notes. But also the interesting thing about this note, we see that it's addressed to a specific person. Miles was writing for himself to get the story out there. Waylon is writing to his wife, Lisa. And to me, I think this is a much better way to set up this game's story than the base game did. I like the base game setup, I really do, but I feel like this just makes it more engaging, as we not only want to escape, we know that our protagonist wants to as well. He wants to get back to his wife and child. Whereas Miles, it felt like at times there was a disconnect from the player. The player always wanted to try escape, but the way Miles was writing sometimes, it sounded like he wanted to go deeper, figure more things out, and truly uncover the mysteries of the asylum. This just again keeps the player and the protagonist in sync. There is no desync where you might question why you're doing what you're doing. But now we need to get out of here, and with the help of a friendly patient, he lets us leave and we can continue on our way. And what I really like about Whistleblower is it's almost an inverted structure of the base game, with us starting in the secret government testing facility area of the asylum, and we get to really see how quickly shit hit the fan here, as the outbreak and the security failure started just now. So we can see the Wall Rider going around attacking things, we can see patients and I guess prisoners running around running rampant and killing security guards and scientists everywhere. Now the Wall Rider is down here and can kill you, so you have to avoid it when it moves through the area, but it isn't too hard. It's just a little bit of dive into this room, let it pass, carry on. But we can also join a group therapy session with some prisoners, and what I think that this DLC does really, really well is that it actually shows how disturbed and animalistic the prisoners are. Yes, they were like this in the base game a bit, like you had the guy that was having sex with the dead body. There was ones that do this, but I think the DLC does a much better job at giving each prisoner a level of individuality that they didn't really always have in the base game. Like a lot of them in the base game kind of just stood there and sat there and didn't say anything, and only like the more important ones said things, or they attacked you when they wanted there's something to attack you. Here, all of them are always saying something, doing something, or reacting to you in different ways. And I really do like that, because it doesn't just make them set dressing game characters, it actually makes them feel like real people. I'll talk about some of the ones that I remember now. In the DLC, there's ones that eat people, there's ones that, again, are jerking off to dead bodies, there's ones that scream at you, telling you to go away, there's one that fucks with you and makes your life more annoying and then tries to kill you. There's one that wants to tell you a secret and talks about how silky your skin is. There's so many different kinds of characters. One playing basketball at one point that gets annoyed when you disturb his game. There's just so many of these NPCs that are not named. They're not important characters. They're not the twins or Walker or Traeger. They're just normal patients, but they have so much personality that it elevates the game in such a way that it makes the experience feel so much better. And this was something that I think was lacking from the base game entirely, was that each patient didn't feel unique. And it's nice to see that developers learned that they can add more personality to each of the patients, which I really, really like. But what this also does is this adds more to the horror again as well. These ones here, while aggressive to us, are somewhat friendly. They let us go. They say, just go on your way before we change our mind. And then when you go out the door, there's another one that will just try to attack you. They are so much more random in this DLC. Some of them will have full-on conversations with you, and others will just attack you on sight or warn you that they will attack you if you don't fuck off. And I really, really like that, because it makes you scared of every prisoner you see. And once you approach them, you're either scared shitless because they start to try to kill you, or they actually start talking to you like normal people. I just think it's such a good thing, and it really does highlight these are people. But with us being chased by this one that tried to kill us, we quickly slip into a vent and begin our escape. Now, eavesdropping on two guards who mention a radio which could be used to contact the outside world, and more specifically the National Guard. And we can again further see how corrupt this corporation is, that even the average guard, who probably is on base pay, is completely corrupted and will not call outside help to save them because they don't want to expose the dark secrets of Murkoff. The average workers are just as corrupt as the bigwigs like Jeremy was. And I think, again, adds to the horror that the average nurse doctor at this asylum probably was just as corrupt as the people at the top. This wasn't just the people at the top pulling strings, they're all corrupt here. They're all monsters. But then again, some of them are just normal people. This guard here wants to escape and go home to his family. He is just a normal guy. Yes, he has a job where he's doing some shady shit, but at the end of the day, it's a job. He's a security guard and he probably didn't ask too many questions about what was going on. He just wanted his paycheck and he wanted to go home when the day ended. But now navigating the area, we find a locked door, which we need to find the button in the security room for to unlock it. And on the other side, a doctor or patient can be seen here. I think this character here is meant to be a smart reflection that both the patients, doctors, guards, and even the big fucking guy were all regular Joes, but they've all been turned into these things capable of doing these horrific things. Doctors capable of performing inhumane tests and procedures, or the patients now running around killing each other, or the big fucking guy who is so monstrously changed that he can rip your head off in one go. And despite how much he pleads with us to help him, and maybe you want to, the game wants to make it apparent that no one here is safe, as when you open the door, a random patient finds him, screams out doctor, and then beats him to death. No one here is safe, and no one here is innocent. Everyone that has been in this asylum has done something. They've either lashed out and started attacking people, or they've abused and controlled people like the doctors have. They aren't innocent in a way. But now, actually making our way through the door that we just unlocked, we make our way into the next section and into the kitchen, meeting the cannibal. A man equipped with a buzzsaw, eating or being in love apparently with this guy in the microwave. Bit like fucking TGF, innit? But here, Waylon now realizes that maybe his wife shouldn't ask to see his body, as maybe the state that it'll be left in is just not nice to look at, especially for his little one. But now, with a locked gate, we need to find a key, all the while Frank, the man with the saw, here decides he wants to hunt us down. And the guy with the saw, what do I think of him? I don't mind him. I think Frank is kind of a boring character. He's nowhere near as intimidating as someone like Traeger or Walker, because Traeger felt more sadistic, and this guy just seems like an insane person that wants to eat you. I don't think his design helps. I think he needs more of a unique design, but I do like him. I think he's decent, but not great at all in any way. But retrieving the key, we can unlock the gate, all the while this guy wants to tell us a secret. Don't know what secret he wants. But escaping Frank, we now get to head to what appears to be an incinerator area, and he begins to try grill us and cook us for his meal. But before we reach a well-done state, we bash our way out onto the other side of the incinerator, much to the annoyance of Frank. And now ascending upwards, we find ourselves again now being stalked by Frank in a new section, which looks almost like a library, and we can find someone having a bit of fun in the toilet. How nice, he's showing him how to use it. Now, something that I think Outlast Whistleblower does really, really well is the amount that it uses the different enemy types, or I guess the main stalker enemies. Within the game, there's 3 stalker type enemies. I'm not going to count the Walrider at the start because it doesn't really stalk you. It kind of just is there. It's like an environmental hazard. But there's 3 main ones throughout the game, and each of them get an extended section. One big complaint I have about base game is Walker is used way too much. Walker is used from the beginning of the game to the end of it. And then you have someone like Traeger who really does help like add a nice palate cleanser. He's different to how Walker acts, sounds and attacks you. He is very, very different, and I just wish they used him more. But in the DLC, they actually do such a good job at having different characters here that all do different things. They sound different, they talk about different things, and it allows for very different feelings to be felt from them, and I like that. This might seem like such a stupid complaint and thing to talk about, but you have to remember that each stalker enemy with how they're designed, they invoke a different kind of fear within you. Chris Walker is the big, bulky, Mr. X nemesis type horror. You're scared of him because he's massive, because he's gonna punch a fucking hole through your chest. But Traeger is different. Traeger's scary because of what he did to us initially. Chop our fingers off and whatever else. We're scared about what he's going to do to us next. Maybe cut our toes off or like rip our toenails off. Just this disgusting torture-esque shit that he does. Now Frank here, bit different. He wants to eat us. I like that. He's cannibalistic. It's a different reason he's hunting us. Not because he's going to kill us, but because he's going to kill us and then eat us. He's going to leave us in a state that is unrecognizable. It's such a small thing, but it just adds to the horror in a way. And it makes each character feel different despite mechanically not being different at all. A different coat of paint makes a room feel completely different. And that's what good enemy design can do. It can make the same mechanics feel very, very different. And the developers clearly show they've learned that as they make sure that no single stalker type enemy overstays their welcome. But within here, we now find an airlock that has been spewing gas constantly, and someone within it begs us to turn it off. So we start looking for a way to turn it off, of again avoiding Frank ankle breaking him in his saw, and eventually after slipping him and breaking his ankles enough time, we can turn off the valve and actually make our way through the airlock, now escaping outside much to the annoyance of Frank, who screams at us. This outside section is kind of annoying as the night vision for some reason doesn't really work properly in the DLC's outside sections, because turning it on you have this like weird white shit in the middle of it. I don't know why. I think it's the fog in how it interacts with it. It just kind of looks weird, but it's still fairly dark and it's a pain in the ass to navigate. But we do see someone practicing their threes in the pitch, and we even run into the twins again, who do stalk us for like 20 seconds. They're not here for very long, but they will kill you if you get near them. But one note that Waylon makes here makes no fucking sense at all. Talking about the basketball boy and the game he's playing, going on about the mathematical proof to prove that he is losing the game. It makes absolutely no sense, but it's clearly used to show that he is losing his mind. He then talks about the drive to this job, and then about the bills, debts, and insurance problems that he's been having in his family. He's clearly losing it, but his memories of his past life and his wife and child are probably keeping him going. Honestly though, can't blame him for losing his mind, because if this was me in this situation, I would still probably be in that first room hiding behind the TVs, hoping it would all just end. But now with the twins spotting us and now wanting to kill us, we make our escape away from them up a ladder after disturbing the group basketball game. And climbing up the ladder onto the guard tower, I think, we meet a rather thoughtful gentleman.
Tell you it's science, but it's not. They were waiting for us in this place. Billy understood. They've always been here.
I guess the Wall Riders have always been here, and this guy is going on about some cult shit. But from this point on, we re-enter the facility again, seeing the sheer chaos that is occurring. But we do finally find that radio that we've been searching for, and we try to make a call to the outside world.
Couldn't just keep your mouth shut. You couldn't just play along. But you're done talking now. Do me a favor and die here, Park.
And with Jeremy beating the shit out of us and the radio, he leaves us, and again we now get to meet with Walker again, with him now stalking us for this section. So we basically just run away from him, quickly stepping him, and we can hear that the evacuation procedures have begun. And hey look, it's Father Martin making all those signs. How cool. And we can kind of see how the events of the base game are connecting into the DLC, and we can see the events that Miles will go through. But it also gives us a timeline, as we know at what time period and what part of the base game we are at currently in the timeline. We know that Miles hasn't reached this point yet, as we are here first, and Father Martin is still making the signs.
Oh God, one of them's coming. It's not even human anymore.
And also, we can quickly run into two guards who have quite an interesting comment. It's a bit of an odd comment, and it actually made me question if Waylon had had some like big physical change and he'd like completely changed. But Waylon had only been in the experiments for about 2 hours, and he was only exposed to like the psychological shit. He wasn't actually physically experimented on yet, like the experiments that Chris had gone through. So I think the line's more meant to be a smart line about how the patients are just seen as monsters. They aren't seen as patients. And it could be like a smart reflection on societal stigma into the traditional asylum patients and psychiatric hospital patients. How if people say that, oh, I was once admitted to a psych hospital, a psych ward, people look at them like, oh, were you insane? Were you a bit loco? Were you, a psycho or whatever? But a lot of the time they were just getting some sort of mental health help that they needed. I think it's a really cool thing, especially at the time, because I think how society looked at mental hospitals and psych wards and stuff at the time was very, very distorted, mainly due to how media presented asylums and how they presented the people that remained who were treated within them. And the fun thing is that insane asylums don't really exist anymore, not in the way that they used to. Like most places have a psychiatric hospital or a psych ward within a hospital, but the traditional like asylum that we see here in this game, they don't exist anymore. And unfortunately, they're still presented as a thing in media
Don't
for
you
some
always
reason.
scale
And
like
people that
video
are
games?
admitted to them are always presented as like raving lunatics or like monsters who like are just completely crazy. I mean, for fuck's sake, here in the UK, we still call it the loony bin, like still to this day. The reason we called it the loony bin is because we sent people who are lunatics, to the hospital to get rid of them. Loony bin. I just think it's a really interesting point to make here about how it's like they're looking at the patients as monsters, and how almost still to this day, people that do go into like psychiatric hospitals and stuff are seen as like, ooh, dangerous. You're not safe to be around. Just think it's a cool thing. And Outlast definitely did affect people's perception on psychiatric hospitals and mental hospitals due to how they presented the asylum in the game. But maybe they weren't talking about us. Maybe they're talking about Chris, who has come back and is now chasing us again. So we start sprinting our ass away, escaping from him. And once we escape outside again, we now need to turn off the electricity to this gate. So heading downstairs, we see a guy jalking it to a dead body. Not my cup of tea, but I'm not going to judge him. And we turn off the power. And heading back up, someone turns it back on just as we get to the gate. This fucking guy. So now we need to turn back around, go back down, and we have to turn the power back off. And goddamn, the guy that was just touching himself is now trying to touch us. He was jalking it with that hand. I don't want to be touched by him. So running away from the guy who now starts chasing us, we actually get through the gate and we enter another part of the courtyard. God damn, this place is fucking huge, ain't it? We're heading up yet another tower. We can try jump over the ledge, but of course we fall and we now find ourselves within the next section of this asylum, the vocational block. And this section is the best part of Outlast 1. First of all, we can hear people in the distance chatting about a figure, the groom. And as we slowly make our way through this area, we can hear them talking about having to give a gift to this groom. A goat, they call it. A sacrifice, I guess. But eventually they or he will find us as a singular person who is speaking to himself in 3 different voices, starts to chase us. But slipping him, we make our way downstairs, and apparently the individual that someone warned us about is down here. So I guess we should be wary of this so-called groom. But anyway, let's just head downstairs. It can't be any worse than that Chris fucking big guy, can it? Nah, this is much worse. This is Eddie Glueskin, the person that we saw at the start of the game going through that procedure / treatment / experiment. He now returns as the groom, and man, this character, the groom, is such a fucking great character design. With him now calling us his darling and now being an extended stalker for this section. And I fucking love him. Now, of course, we have to avoid him, all the while he goes on about the shit that he goes on about. Talking about marriage, how much he's going to love us, how much he's going to love our children when we have them, and about how his mother always told him that he should always marry a nice person and make sure that he has kids with them. It's just fucking freaky because at times he'll just start exclaiming that he wants to have his baby and just starts to try grab us and shit. He is just creepy in the best way possible, and I love it. But eventually we jump down an elevator shaft, and of course we injure ourselves, much to the horror of Eddie. But of course, he tries to kill us as he believes that we're trying to escape him. But he doesn't realize that we can get out on this floor, so we quickly do that, and he continues his chase. Eventually, we reach a dead end with our only option for escape being to hide in this locker. And guess what? Eddie will know you're in there. No matter what you do, he will find you.
Smell of my love's arbor. Darling, can't hide from me. You make yourself a gift for me. A delicacy to be unwrapped and unwrapped again. And savored. Here we go. I've been a little vulgar. And I want to say I'm sorry. I just... You know how a man gets when he wants to know a woman. But after the ceremony, when I've made an honest woman of you, I promise I'll be a different man. I want a family, a legacy, to be the father I never had. I'll never let anything happen to our children. Not like... You'll have to wait here. I know you must be just as eager as I am to consummate our love. But try to enjoy the anticipation. Here, darling. This will help you relax.
And we are knocked out and awaken feeling a little bit like a cuck in a closet, watching him being intimate with another man. And during this 12-hour nap that we have, he really does get very intimate with this man. But after he finishes up with that darling, he moves along to us, now strapping us into quite the contraption. Man, I just love how cock and balls is just always all over the place in this fucking game. But his word choices are quite interesting about this whole scene. I think it's meant to almost be a horrific reflection of what a relationship can be like for women. Being expected to have kids and that men almost force themselves on them to change their bodies if, like, they don't want kids. Not force themselves in that way, but you kind of get the idea where, like, parents and extended family will always go on about, oh, when are you having kids? When are you doing this? When are you... You get the point? They're almost feel forced that they have to go through this like massive bodily change just to please others. And here, Eddie is almost doing that because he's meant to be playing the role of the husband who only cares about having kids and having that love. And it's just a freaky reflection of that, of how almost you lose your body autonomy or the control over your body because you're expected to do something by other people. It's just really unique horror that's able to be applied to other people and people who can't have kids by using a visual and showing us a way that he's going to do it, like how he's going to like mutilate us in that way to reflect that. And I really fucking like that. And it does such a good job of reflecting that horror to someone that I can't experience that horror. I just cannot. But this whole thing is a bit dehumanizing, isn't it? Probably a bit like that of having a child as well. Again, I wouldn't know. I'm a bloke. Women, let me know. But after being saved and being able to escape after this random guy saves us, we make a break for it, all the while limping as we did just hurt our leg. I fucking love that. But diving out the building, escaping the groom, who, like some guys who, when their partner doesn't do exactly what they want, screams at us, calls us a slut and a whore, and now fucks off. And now we find ourselves in the gym room after a little bit of wandering, and it is quite well decorated in here. It's very lovely. But of course, Eddie isn't far behind and is still hunting us, and we need to find the key to escape. And once we do find that, he begins properly stalking us and chasing us. We make our way to the locked gate, but of course Eddie grabs us, pulls us into this string contraption, and almost hangs us like a trophy that he wants to display. Again, maybe a reflection how people view relationships and how that horror of you're not loved because of like the love, but because of what you provide, that you're a trophy, a partner, that kind of thing. Kind of smart. I really do like how they've used the whole theming of like relationships and family within Eddie Glueskin. But of course, his plan doesn't go very well as the roof begins to break after he's put probably 100 people into the roof. And he gets flung up and impaled on a random piece of metal that I didn't even know was there. And he kills himself. Yeah, quite interesting. Now, after this, we slowly find ourselves back at the entrance area of the asylum, now seeing the chapel across the way completely set on fire. I guess Father Martin has finally burnt himself alive. And we can see some Murkoff mercenaries around Traeger's body talking about dick and balls. Very nice. But we now start sprinting our way through the halls and we can see the entrance at the entrance of the asylum, no shit. And Jeremy is sitting right at the door, still alive but gravely wounded. And here he still tries to kill us, but the Walrider decides that he is going to kill Jeremy.
No one can know. No one.
It's either Billy or Miles. I'm going to guess it's Miles. Kills Jeremy and allows Waylon to escape the asylum and eventually reach the car that Miles came to the asylum in, which luckily still has the keys in the ignition, allowing us to make our grand escape. Not before whoever this Walrider is pays us a visit and allows Waylon to leave.
Press that button. There's no going back, Mr. Park. There's enough hard evidence in that video file to make a world of shit for our friends at Murkoff.
And now Waylon exposes everything that happened within the asylum, so even though Miles is dead, their original goal was still achieved through Waylon, who carries the torch in exposing the company and potentially putting himself, his wife and son in danger, but maybe he did make a positive change in the world. And that ends Outlast Whistleblower. Whistleblower is such an interesting DLC to talk about because of what it means for the franchise as a whole. There's one thing that Whistleblower itself proves about Outlast was that the game's base idea doesn't need great gameplay to truly make something great. Outlast, the original, is an amazing game. I'm going to put it at that. It's a game that I think does everything it needs to be a good horror game. And Red Barrels replicated that with Whistleblower. But the key part about Whistleblower is that while it didn't change anything mechanical about the game, and while a lot of it takes place in the same location, the way that they utilize it is very different, and it actually shows they learned a lot of good lessons about how to make a good horror game. First of all, Whistleblower gives a lot of missing context and more information and more storytelling into what actually went wrong at Mount Massive Asylum. We fully understand how shit started to go down, why shit started going wrong, and where the whistleblower came from, who that was that sent Miles the email originally. While a lot of the time I'm always for not giving out too much information, I think Outlast as a game definitely does need to give more to elevate the horror even more. Outlast base game, I think, focuses way too much on the physical horror of stuff. And if you're not reading the notes at the end when you start seeing all the government facility shit, it kind of feels like it comes out of left field if you haven't been watching the notes. And I think the team at Red Barrels knew this was happening with players. So when they made the DLC, having the horror of the facility and the big wigs, having Jeremy be present in the game, makes that horror more central. They have shown that they understand how to balance their horror more and actually balance the story better within it as well. It makes the story feel more complete, and it actually gives the DLC more depth than the base game, which is interesting to say because the DLC has probably, I would say, half the length of the base game, but it doesn't replace base Outlast. I think base Outlast is kind of the better horror experience overall. If you want the jump scares, you want to be chased more, I'd say the original game is better at doing that. But the DLC does a better job of actually balancing out a lot of the issues I had. Balancing the type of stalker enemies that are chasing you, balancing the different kinds of horror, seeing the horror of the corporation next to the horror of the monster, the darkness, everything else like that. It doesn't replace it, but it feels more complete to me. Whistleblower justifies its own creation and own existence because it makes Outlast as a game better. Putting the DLC with the base game makes it one of the best horror experiences in gaming, hands down. And I really do like that, despite the fact that Red Barrels could have just made a completely different thing. They could have just made you a random guy in the asylum and their job was escape. They made you a worker for Murkoff. They made you someone that had ties to this place, making them themselves a monster. I just really like it. And to me, it shows that they understand that they need to build and not just make simple, scary games. They need to build a world up and make something more thought-provoking. And I think that's what Whistleblower does show, that Red Barrels needed to make a story more interesting and make you question more about what's going on. But also, I think Red Barrels did also, but I also think the devs behind this game did fully learn that they shouldn't bloat their game too much. Outlast does have an issue with bloat. There are sections that feel very pointless and are added just for the sake of padding. Whistleblower, I'm not going to say it doesn't have any of that. There are sections where it does feel a bit
Wow.
bloaty.
Funny enough, they sent a new guy directly saying it looks like they've been eavesdropping on my phone mic.
One of the best experiences that they could create. It showed that they learned their lessons from
Dude,
the base game.
being, I was complaining about it's always the same guy over and over and all that stuff.
To me, if I was playing this game,
Like, I recognize his voice, like, immediately right away. And then, that was a different guy, but this one sounded so weird, like he was using an AI voice filter. I'm like, okay, why do you sound so fucking weird? But as soon as they said my name, it's just like, nah, dude. This is dead giveaway.
Evolving the formula, evolving the mechanics, evolving the gameplay. It allows them to truly focus on making the second game, the sequel to Outlast,
No,
the
the
best sequel they can, and I fucking adore that. But what is Outlast and the DLC actually about? Outlast, when you enter the game, you think it's about monsters and crazy people, maybe ghosts.
I mean,
and
it wouldn't surprise me if that's
shit,
what was
and
happening,
big
but
people
just
running around.
like, yeah, it is
But
funny how it's a
absolutely
new
the
guy this
story,
time.
and the
Like,
game
for like
tries to tell you that
3
this
months
isn't
now,
happening
it's always been
so
the same
people
guy.
stop
But as
seeing
soon
it
as I
how it
complain about
appeals,
it's the same guy
where
that I
power,
recognize to kill,
ambition,
and you guys,
greed start to
it's a new guy.
overlap and take control of the
Conveniently.
world and start to envelop everyone. I hate saying this in every fucking video I make now, but it feels like each and every video I make applies more and more to real life now. The messages within it. I think now more than ever, big corporations, governments, big influencers online are so driven to try push agendas, push messages, push division, and make as much noise as they can to get attention. They're so much desire to do this because they know at the end of the day they will get something out of it. I don't want to make this video political, but it's very clear to me that we as people are being pushed in a direction to view other people who aren't a part of certain groups, who don't look like us, who don't share the same religion as us, as not human, as wrong, as outsiders. And at the end of the day, the people that pay the biggest price for this thought being pushed amongst the people is not the big people with the money, not politicians, not people that are famous, but it's always the people who have nothing in life, people who are low down, people who can be easily lost within the noise. That's who ends up paying the price. The lesson that Outlast, I think, truly does try to teach reaches far beyond the game. Whether it's about corporations chasing profit, a government seeking to control and abuse the world, or even individuals sacrificing their own values to get ahead of others, the result is often the same for all of them. I think this is truly why Outlast still resonates and people love it this